The gunshot shattered more than just glass that day. It shattered everything Michael Carter thought he knew about fate. One moment, he was a struggling single dad trying to afford his son's next meal. The next, he was throwing himself between bullets and a stranger in a white coat. But here's what he didn't know. That woman wasn't just anyone. She was Samantha Hale, billionaire CEO, and his split-second decision would change both their lives forever. Stay with me until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Riverside Mall had been flickering for the past 20 minutes, but nobody seemed to care. It was Saturday afternoon, prime shopping time, and the usual chaos of weekend crowds drowned out everything else. Michael Carter noticed, though. He noticed everything. 7 years as a Marine and 3 more as a mall security guard had trained his eyes to catch the details others missed. The teenager shoplifting candy bars, the elderly woman who'd lost her car keys, the suspicious guy who'd circled the electronics store 4 times without going in. But today, Michael wasn't working. Today, he was just a dad, holding his 7-year-old son's hand and trying to figure out how to make $12 stretch far enough to buy the toy dinosaur Owen had been begging for all month. "Dad, can we get ice cream after?" Owen looked up at him with those big brown eyes, the same eyes his mother had before the cancer took her 3 years ago. Michael's chest tightened. He had exactly enough for the dinosaur or ice cream. Not both, never both. "We'll see, buddy. Let's find your dinosaur first." The toy store was on the 2nd floor, past the jewelry district where glass cases gleamed with diamonds that cost more than Michael's annual salary. He walked faster, not wanting Owen to stop and press his face against those windows like he sometimes did, asking innocent questions about why they couldn't buy Mommy a pretty necklace from heaven. That's when Michael's instincts kicked in. 3 men entered through the east entrance, moving with purpose. They wore light jackets despite the spring warmth, and their eyes swept the crowd with predatory precision. Michael's hand tightened on Owen's shoulder. Something was wrong. The way they walked, synchronized, military style, the bulges under their jackets, the way the tallest one touched his ear like he was adjusting an earpiece. Michael had seen enough combat to recognize a coordinated operation when he saw one. "Owen, stay close to me." His voice came out sharper than intended, and Owen's smile faded. "Dad? What's wrong?" Before Michael could answer, the lights went out completely. For 3 seconds, Riverside Mall plunged into absolute darkness. Screams erupted immediately, that primal fear of not knowing what's coming. Then the emergency lights kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow that made the chrome fixtures look like they were bleeding. That's when the first gunshot rang out. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, a crack that seemed to split reality in half. Michael didn't think. He grabbed Owen and dove behind a kiosk selling phone cases, pressing his son against the wall with his body as a shield. "Dad!" Owen's voice was pure terror. "Shh, baby, shh. Don't make a sound." Michael's heart hammered against his ribs. He could feel Owen trembling beneath him, could smell the strawberry shampoo from his morning bath. "I've got you, I've got you." "Everybody on the ground, now!" The voice boomed across the mall, amplified by the acoustics. "Hands where we can see them!" Michael risked a glance around the kiosk. The 3 men had spread out in a tactical formation around Prestige Jewelers, the high-end store that occupied the mall's central position. They'd pulled ski masks over their faces and now held AR-15s. Not the cheap knockoffs either, but military-grade weapons that meant these guys either had serious money or serious connections. The tallest one, clearly the leader, fired another shot into the ceiling. Chunks of plaster rained down, and more screams filled the air. People dropped to the marble floor, covering their heads with their hands. An elderly man wasn't moving fast enough, and one of the gunmen kicked him in the ribs. Michael watched the old man crumple with a cry of pain and felt rage burn through his fear. "Please," a woman sobbed nearby. "Please don't hurt us. Shut up." The second gunman swept his rifle across the crowd. "Shut up, or I'll give you something to cry about." Owen whimpered against Michael's chest, and Michael pressed his hand gently over his son's mouth. "Breathe through your nose, buddy, in and out, like when you're hiding in hide and seek. You're the best hider ever, remember?" The third gunman had already smashed through Prestige Jewelers' window with the butt of his rifle. Glass exploded outward in a glittering cascade. He reached in and grabbed a jewelry worker by her collar, dragging her halfway through the broken window. "Open the cases! All of them! Move!" I can't," the woman gasped. "They're on timers. They won't open for another hour." The gunman slammed her against the broken glass, and she screamed as it cut into her arm. Blood blossomed across her white blouse. "Then override it." "I can't. The manager has the code. He's not here today." The leader stepped forward, moving with the kind of calm that was more terrifying than rage. "Then I guess we do this the hard way." He raised his rifle and fired into the closest jewelry case. The reinforced glass spiderwebbed but didn't break. He fired again. On the third shot, it shattered. 2 minutes, he barked at his team. "Fill the bags and move." Michael's mind raced. 2 minutes. That was all they had. 2 minutes before these guys either got what they wanted and left, or got frustrated and started shooting hostages. He'd seen it before in Baghdad. Desperate men with guns and a ticking clock never ended well. He looked at Owen, whose face was pale with terror, then scanned the area for the nearest exit. The east entrance was blocked by one of the gunmen. The west entrance was too far. They'd never make it across that open space without being seen. His eyes landed on the service corridor behind the kiosk, the one employees used to move stock between stores. If he could get Owen there. Then he saw her. A woman in a white coat stood frozen near the jewelry store's display window, maybe 15 feet from the gunman. She couldn't have been more than 35, with dark hair pulled back in a professional bun and a leather laptop bag clutched to her chest like a shield. She wasn't on the ground like everyone else. She just stood there, paralyzed, her body rigid with shock. The second gunman hadn't noticed her yet. He was focused on scooping armfuls of watches and necklaces into a duffel bag. But any second now, he would turn around. Any second, he would see her standing there when everyone else was down, and he would think she was a threat, or a witness, or just someone who hadn't followed orders. Michael knew what came next. He'd seen it too many times. "Stay here," he whispered to Owen. "Don't move. Don't make a sound. Count to 100 really slow, then go through that door behind us. Find a security guard. Can you do that for me?" Owen's eyes went wide with understanding. "Dad, no. I love you, buddy." Michael kissed his son's forehead, then moved before he could think about what he was doing, before fear could root him in place. He ran. Not toward the exit, not toward safety, toward the woman in white. His boots barely made a sound on the marble floor. Marine training never left you, but it was enough. The third gunman's head snapped up, tracking the movement. Michael saw the rifle barrel start to swing in his direction, saw the man's finger begin to squeeze the trigger. Time didn't slow down. That was a myth. Instead, everything sharpened. Michael could see the individual scratches on the rifle's scope, could count the tiles between him and the woman, could hear his own heartbeat like a war drum in his ears. The woman finally moved, her head turning toward him with agonizing slowness. Her eyes met his, and Michael saw the exact moment realization hit. The moment she understood she'd been standing there like a target while everyone else was down. He was 5 feet away when the gunshot came. The bullet didn't hit him. Instead, it struck the jewelry store's main display window, the huge sheet of reinforced glass that showcased a $3 million diamond necklace. The glass exploded in a storm of crystalline shrapnel, and Michael threw himself forward, covering the woman with his body as 1,000 tiny blades filled the air. They hit the floor hard. Michael's shoulder took the brunt of the impact, and he felt something in his collarbone grind in a way that made stars explode behind his eyes. The woman gasped beneath him, her laptop bag crushed between them. Glass rained down like hail, pinging off his back, his neck, his scalp. Pieces sharp enough to slice skin embedded in his shirt. "Stay still," he breathed into her ear. "Don't move, don't make a sound." She was shaking so hard he could feel her whole body vibrating against his. Her breathing came in short, panicked gasps that told him she was seconds from a full panic attack. Michael had seen soldiers freeze up in combat, had talked more than one through the paralysis that came when your brain couldn't process what was happening fast enough. "Listen to me," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "Breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it. You're okay. I've got you." "Get those cases open," the leader roared. "Forget the small stuff. I want the diamonds from the main vault." "The what?" one of his men replied. Boss, there's no... The vault, behind the back wall, there's supposed to be a reinforced door, says... How do you know that? A pause. Because I worked here, you idiot. 5 years ago, before they fired me. Now find it. Michael's mind filed that information away. Inside job. The leader knew the layout, knew the security protocols, knew exactly when the manager wouldn't be here. This wasn't some random hit. This was planned, organized, personal, which made it more dangerous. Vengeful people with guns didn't just want money, they wanted to prove something. And people trying to prove something took bigger risks, made messier decisions, cared less about witnesses. The woman beneath him let out a tiny sob, and Michael felt her trying to look up. Don't, he murmured. Keep your head down. Close your eyes if you can. My son, she whispered. I have a son. He's 8. His name is... You're going to see him again, Michael cut her off, gently but firmly. But right now you need to trust me. Can you do that? She nodded against his chest, and Michael felt some of the tension leave her body. Good. Panic got people killed. Focus kept them alive. He risked a glance over his shoulder. The gunman had moved deeper into the store, disappearing into the back room. The leader stood guard at the entrance, rifle sweeping back and forth across the crowd of hostages. Michael could see the tactical vest beneath his jacket now, the spare magazines clipped to his belt. This guy had come prepared for a war, but he'd made one mistake. He'd moved his backup away from the main floor. That left him alone, watching 50-some hostages spread across 100 feet of mall. Too much space. Too many variables. The emergency lights flickered, and Michael heard sirens in the distance. Someone had called 911. Help was coming. All they had to do was survive until then. Police! A voice echoed through the mall's sound system, tinny and distorted. This is the Riverside Police Department. The building is surrounded. Release the hostages and come out with your hands up. The leader's head snapped toward the east entrance, where blue and red lights now flashed through the glass doors. Damn it! He keyed his earpiece. How long? A muffled response Michael couldn't hear. Fine, we do it the hard way. The leader grabbed the nearest hostage, a teenage girl, and hauled her to her feet. She screamed, and her mother lunged forward only to be knocked back by the rifle's stock. Listen up, I'm walking out of here with what I came for, and if anyone tries to stop me, I start shooting. He dragged the girl toward the service entrance, the one employees used for deliveries. Michael's blood ran cold. That was the same corridor he'd told Owen to use. If his son was still there, if he hadn't moved yet. The woman beneath him felt him tense. What is it? She whispered. My son. The words tasted like ash. I told him to go that way. Her hand found his, surprisingly strong despite her trembling. Then we stopped them. We? Michael almost laughed at the absurdity. Lady, no offense, but we're currently lying in broken glass while guys with automatic weapons rob a jewelry store. We're not stopping anything. My name is Samantha. Her voice had changed, some of the fear burning away to reveal steel underneath. And I didn't survive building a company from nothing to die in a mall at 34. Michael turned his head to look at her properly for the first time. Even with her face pressed against the floor, even with glass in her hair and terror in her eyes, there was something formidable about her. The set of her jaw. The way she met his gaze without flinching. What do you want me to do? She asked. Before Michael could answer, one of the other gunmen emerged from the back room, dragging an industrial-sized duffel bag that clinked with stolen goods. Got it. Let's go. About damn time! The leader shoved the teenage girl away and turned toward his exit. That's when his eyes swept over the floor and landed on Michael and Samantha. They locked eyes across 20 feet of marble in chaos. Michael saw the moment of calculation. Witness, threat, complication. The rifle started to rise. Michael moved without thinking, rolling off Samantha and putting himself between her and the weapon. Don't! The single word came out harder than steel, carrying 7 years of military authority. It was the voice Michael had used to command Marines in firefights. The voice that didn't ask or beg, but simply stated reality. The gunman hesitated. Just for a second. Just long enough for his brain to process that Michael wasn't a scared civilian, but something else entirely. The way Michael had positioned his body, angled to minimize target area, weight on the balls of his feet despite being on the ground, eyes locked on the weapon rather than the wielder, It all screamed combat training. "Marcus, move!" one of the other gunmen shouted. The spell broke. Marcus, the leader, took a step back, rifle still trained on Michael. "Stay down, hero. This doesn't concern you." "You have what you came for," Michael said evenly. "Take it and go. Nobody else needs to get hurt." "You giving me orders?" Marcus's voice carried a dangerous edge. "You think you're in charge here?" "I think you're running out of time." Michael nodded toward the entrance where the police presence was growing. "Every second you stand here arguing, that perimeter gets tighter. You know how this works? Containment first, then negotiation. You've got maybe 3 minutes before they lock this building down completely." Marcus's eyes narrowed behind the ski mask. "You talk like someone who knows." "Force recon. 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan." Michael kept his voice calm, conversational. "I've seen standoffs go bad, Marcus. The ones who survive are the ones who know when to walk away." "Marcus?" Samantha whispered beside him. "You called him by name." Michael didn't take his eyes off the gunman. His buddy said it. "That means they're not as professional as they're trying to appear. That means mistakes." "Shut up!" Marcus took another step back, the rifle wavering slightly. Michael could see the calculation happening, the cost-benefit analysis of shooting a witness versus making a clean getaway. The sirens were getting louder. Time was running out. "Last chance," Michael said, "but 3 minutes, maybe less." For a heartbeat, Michael thought Marcus might do it, might pull the trigger out of pride or fear or just the chaos of the moment. Then one of the other gunmen grabbed his shoulder. "Boss, we gotta go! Now!" Marcus backed away, rifle still pointed at Michael's chest. "You're lucky today, both of you." Then he turned and ran toward the service corridor, his team following. The second they disappeared, chaos erupted. People started screaming, crying, scrambling for the exits. Michael rolled back to Samantha, his hands running over her arms and shoulders, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did any glass get you?" I don't know." She looked down at herself as if surprised to find her body still intact. "I can't feel anything. That's shock. It'll pass." Michael helped her sit up carefully, brushing glass fragments from her coat. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. "You're okay. You're going to be okay." "Owen." The name burst from his lips like a prayer. "I have to—" He was on his feet before he finished the sentence, running toward the service corridor. His shoulder screamed in protest, but he ignored it. All that mattered was Owen. He burst through the door into the narrow hallway beyond, his eyes scanning the shadows. "Owen! Owen! Where are you? Dad?" The small voice came from behind a stack of boxes 30 feet down the corridor. Michael ran toward it, his heart threatening to break through his ribs. Owen emerged from his hiding spot, his face streaked with tears but otherwise unharmed. Michael dropped to his knees and pulled his son into his arms, holding him so tight it probably hurt. "Thank God. Thank God you're okay." "I counted to 100, Owen sobbed into his shoulder. 3 times. But you didn't come back, so I hid like you said. Did I do good?" "You did perfect, buddy. So perfect." Michael pulled back just far enough to check Owen over, his hands running through his son's hair, over his arms, making sure there were no injuries. "Are you hurt anywhere?" Owen shook his head. "I heard the bad men run past. They didn't see me." "Good. That's so good." Michael picked Owen up. He was getting too big for this, but Michael didn't care, and carried him back toward the main mall. Police officers were flooding in now, shouting orders, trying to establish control. EMTs followed close behind, setting up triage areas for the injured. Samantha was sitting where he'd left her, surrounded by police officers taking her statement. When she saw Michael emerge with Owen in his arms, relief flooded her face. She stood up, swaying slightly, and one of the officers steadied her. "Ma'am, you need to stay seated." "I'm fine." She pulled free and walked toward Michael on unsteady legs. When she reached them, she looked at Owen with an expression Michael couldn't quite read. "Is this your son?" "Yeah." Michael set Owen down but kept a protective hand on his shoulder. "Owen, this is— I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." "Samantha." She held out her hand to Owen with surprising formality. It's very nice to meet you, Owen. Your father is a very brave man. Owen looked up at Michael with pride shining in his eyes. I know. He's the bravest. Samantha smiled, but there were tears on her cheeks now. Would you mind if I talked to your father alone for just 1 minute? Owen looked to Michael for permission. At his nod, Owen wandered over to watch the EMTs work, his natural curiosity overcoming his fear now that the danger had passed. Samantha turned back to Michael, and suddenly she was crying in earnest. You saved my life! The words came out choked. That glass, if you hadn't covered me, I saw what it did to the displays. It would have... Hey! Michael caught her hands, which were shaking uncontrollably. You're okay. That's what matters. But your son. You left your son to save a stranger. She looked at him with something like awe. Who does that? Anyone would have done the same, Michael said automatically. No. Samantha shook her head firmly, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that pinned him in place. No, they wouldn't. I've lived in this world long enough to know that most people look out for themselves first. You didn't. You saw someone in danger and you ran toward it, not away. That's... She had to stop, overcome with emotion. That's extraordinary. Michael felt uncomfortable with the praise. He didn't feel extraordinary. He felt like a man who'd made a split-second decision and gotten lucky that it worked out. I was a Marine. We don't leave people behind. Were? Retired. He touched his shoulder unconsciously, where an IED had left shrapnel that still ached on cold days. Medical discharge. Nothing dramatic, just enough damage that they couldn't deploy me anymore. Samantha's eyes tracked the gesture, then moved to the blood seeping through his shirt from the glass cuts. You're hurt. It's nothing. You're bleeding through your shirt. That's not nothing. She looked around for an EMT, then back at him with determination. At least let them check you out. I need to get Owen home. He's been through enough today. Then give me your number. The words tumbled out quickly, almost desperately. Please, I want to thank you properly, when things are calmer. Michael hesitated. Something about the intensity in her gaze made him uncomfortable, like he'd seen too deeply into her soul during those minutes on the floor. But she'd been through trauma, and trauma made people form connections to whoever was there when it happened. In a few days, once the shock wore off, she'd forget about him entirely. Sure. He pulled out his phone with his good arm and typed in her number as she recited it. But really, you don't need to thank me. Yes, Samantha said quietly. I really do. An officer called her name, needing more information for the report. She squeezed Michael's hand once more, then walked back to give her statement. Michael watched her go, noting the way she held herself. Straight spine, squared shoulders, like she was physically holding herself together through willpower alone. Then Owen tugged on his pants, and Michael forgot about the woman in white. He had his son to take care of, dinner to figure out with whatever was left in the fridge, and a building full of police reports to file. The dinosaur Owen wanted would have to wait another month. The ice cream would definitely have to wait. As they left through the east entrance, walking past police cruisers and news vans, Michael glanced back at the mall once. Samantha was talking to a police captain, her white coat stained with dust and flecked with tiny spots of blood. His blood, from where glass had cut his back. She looked small suddenly, and vulnerable, not at all like the composed woman who'd looked at him with such intensity moments before. Then Owen said something about wanting pizza for dinner, and Michael turned away, focusing on his son's chatter as they walked toward the bus stop. He didn't know that across the mall, Samantha was refusing to leave until she'd given detailed descriptions of Michael and Owen to every authority figure present. Didn't know she was insisting they find out who he was, where he lived, how to contact him. Didn't know that as she finally agreed to be driven home, she clutched a scrap of paper with his number on it like a lifeline. Michael Carter had no idea that the woman he'd saved wasn't just anyone, that by morning his split-second decision would be replayed on every news channel. That his life, his comfortable, predictable, barely getting by life, was about to change in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. All he knew was that his shoulder hurt like hell, Owen was safe, and they had exactly $4.23 until his next paycheck. It would have to be enough. It always had to be enough. The apartment smelled like burnt mac and cheese when they got home, which meant Michael had forgotten to turn off the stove before they left that morning. He stood in the doorway of their tiny kitchen, staring at the blackened pot in the sink, and felt the weight of the day finally crash down on him. His hands started shaking so badly he had to grip the counter. "Dad?" Owen's voice came from behind him, small and worried. "Are you okay?" Michael took a breath, forced his hands to steady, and turned around with what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "Yeah, buddy, just tired. Why don't you go wash up while I figure out dinner?" Owen didn't move. He stood in the doorway in his dinosaur t-shirt, the one with a hole in the sleeve that Michael kept meaning to sew, and looked at his father with eyes too old for 7 years. "You were scared today. I saw you." Michael's throat tightened. He'd tried so hard to be strong, to shield Owen from the worst of it. But kids saw everything. "Yeah," he admitted quietly. "I was scared. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are. Like when you helped that lady? Like that." Owen considered this for a moment, then crossed the small kitchen and wrapped his arms around Michael's waist. "I was really scared too, but then I remembered what you always say, that we're a team, that we look out for each other." Michael hugged his son back, blinking hard against the sudden sting in his eyes. "That's right. Always." They ordered pizza with the last of the cash Michael had stashed in the coffee can, the emergency fund that was supposed to last until the end of the month, but now had exactly $8 left. Owen ate 3 slices while watching cartoons, his trauma already fading into the background the way children's trauma sometimes did. Kids were resilient. Michael knew that from experience, from the children he'd seen in war zones who played soccer and bombed out streets like it was the most normal thing in the world. But resilience had limits. Everyone's did. After Owen fell asleep in Michael's bed because he was too scared to sleep alone, Michael sat on their worn couch and finally let himself process what had happened. His shoulder throbbed where it had hit the floor, his back stung from a dozen shallow cuts, but it was his hands that wouldn't stop shaking, the adrenaline finally working its way out of his system. He'd killed men in war, had been shot at more times than he could count, but today had been different. Today, Owen had been there. Today, Michael had looked at his son's terrified face and known that one wrong move, one moment of hesitation, could make Owen an orphan. The thought made him want to throw up. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, and Michael picked it up, expecting a text from his supervisor asking if he was okay. Instead, it was an unknown number. "This is Samantha Hale, the woman from the mall. I wanted to check on you and your son. Are you both all right?" Michael stared at the message for a long moment. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to let this woman fade back into being a stranger he'd helped once. But something about the formality of the text, the way she'd introduced herself fully, like he might not remember, made him respond. "We're fine. How are you doing?" The reply came almost instantly. "Honestly, I'm sitting in my house drinking wine and trying not to shake apart. I keep seeing that glass exploding. Keep hearing those gunshots." Michael typed back, "That's normal. Shock takes time to process. Give yourself permission to feel it." "Is that what you're doing?" He looked down at his trembling hands. "Trying to." There was a pause, then another message appeared. "Thank you for today, for what you did. I know you said anyone would have done the same, but I've been thinking about that and I really don't think that's true. Most people freeze or run. You didn't. Marine training. Maybe. Or maybe you're just a better person than most." Michael didn't know how to respond to that, so he didn't. After a few minutes, another message came through. "I hope this isn't too forward, but I'd like to do something for you, to thank you properly. Could we meet for coffee sometime this week?" Michael's first instinct was to refuse. He didn't need her gratitude, didn't want to be anyone's hero. But something stopped him, maybe the memory of how scared she'd looked, or how her hand had found his in the broken glass, or just the loneliness that came with being a single parent who worked nights and barely saw anyone outside of work and Owen's school events. "Sure. Tuesday afternoon. Owen has soccer practice." "Tuesday is perfect. There's a coffee shop called The Grind on 5th Street. Does 2 p.m. work?" "I'll be there." Michael set down his phone and rubbed his eyes. He should shower, clean the cuts on his back, take some ibuprofen for his shoulder, Instead, he just sat there in the dim living room listening to Owen's soft breathing from the bedroom and trying to convince himself that everything was okay. They were alive. They were safe. That was enough. It had to be enough. The nightmares came that night, the way they always did after something triggered his PTSD. Michael woke up 3 times in a cold sweat, his heart racing, the sound of gunfire still echoing in his ears. Each time he checked on Owen first, making sure his son was real, was breathing, was safe, before forcing himself back to sleep. By Monday morning, Michael felt like he'd been hit by a truck. He called in sick to work, the first time he'd done so in 8 months, and spent the day trying to convince Owen that going back to school was safe. His son had slept fightily all night, waking up twice with nightmares of his own, and now refused to leave Michael's side. "What if the bad men come to school?" Owen asked, clutching his backpack straps so tight his knuckles went white. Michael knelt down to his son's eye level, his bad shoulder protesting. "They won't, buddy. Those men wanted jewelry, not kids. And besides, there are security guards at school, remember? Mr. Peterson? He used to be a police officer." "But you said Mall has security too, and the bad men still came." Michael couldn't argue with that logic. "You're right. Sometimes bad things happen even when we try to prevent them. But here's what I know. You are brave, and you are smart, and if anything ever feels wrong, you trust that feeling and you find a teacher. Okay?" Owen nodded slowly, not entirely convinced, but willing to try. Michael walked him to school himself, even though it made him 20 minutes late for a meeting with his landlord about next month's rent. Mrs. Chen was understanding, as always, but Michael could see the concern in her eyes when she noticed the bandages on his hands from the glass cuts. "You were there," she said. It wasn't a question. "At the mall. I saw it on the news." "Yeah. They said a man protected a woman, that he threw himself over her when the shooting started." Mrs. Chen looked at him with something like wonder. "That was you?" Michael shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what anyone would do." "My son says you're a hero. He wants to be like you when he grows up." The words sat heavy in Michael's chest. Hero. He'd been called that before, after his second tour, when he'd pulled 3 soldiers out of a burning Humvee. After his third tour, when he'd held a position against insurgents long enough for his team to evacuate civilians. But he'd never felt like a hero. He'd just felt like someone trying to make sure his people made it home alive. "I'm not a hero, Mrs. Chen. I'm just a dad who got lucky." She smiled sadly, like she understood something he didn't. Sometimes those are the same thing. Tuesday came faster than Michael expected. He dropped Owen at soccer practice with Coach Martinez, a good man who'd played college ball and volunteered his time to keep kids like Owen off the streets. Then Michael drove his beat-up Honda across town to 5th Street, his stomach twisting with an anxiety he couldn't quite name. The Grind was the kind of coffee shop that catered to young professionals. Exposed brick walls, industrial lighting, coffee that cost more than Michael's lunch budget for a week. He felt out of place the moment he walked in, wearing his best jeans and a button-down shirt that he'd ironed twice to get the wrinkles out. Samantha was already there, sitting at a corner table by the window. She looked different than she had at the mall. Her hair was down, falling in dark waves past her shoulders, and she wore a simple black dress that probably cost more than Michael's monthly salary. But it was her face that struck him. Without the fear and shock, he could see her clearly. High cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes that were almost gray in the afternoon light. She was beautiful in the way that rich people were beautiful, like she'd never missed a meal or worried about a bill in her life. Then she saw him and smiled, and the anxiety on her face was so obvious that Michael's nervousness faded. She was just as worried about this meeting as he was. "Michael." She stood up as he approached, and for an awkward moment neither of them knew whether to shake hands or hug. They settled on a brief, uncomfortable embrace that lasted exactly 1 second. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I said I would." Michael pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. Up close, he could see the exhaustion in her face, the way her makeup didn't quite hide the shadows under her eyes. "Have you been sleeping?" Samantha laughed, a sharp sound without humor. "Not really. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there, on that floor, hearing those gunshots." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like it could warm something deeper than her skin. "My therapist says it's normal, that it'll get better with time." Your therapist is right. Michael flagged down a barista and ordered black coffee. No fancy additions, nothing he had to explain how to pronounce. Trauma is like that. It takes up all the space in your head at first, but eventually your brain starts to process it, file it away. It never disappears completely, but it gets manageable. You sound like you know from experience. 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. Michael took the coffee when it arrived and wrapped his own hands around the cup, mirroring her gesture. I've got enough trauma for a lifetime, probably 2 lifetimes. Samantha studied him with those gray eyes, and Michael had the uncomfortable sensation of being truly seen. Is that why you weren't scared? At the mall? Oh, I was scared. Michael met her gaze steadily. I was terrified, but fear and paralysis are different things. You learn that in combat, how to move through fear instead of letting it stop you. I froze, Samantha said quietly. When the shooting started, I just stood there, like an idiot. I couldn't make my body move. She looked down at her coffee. I built a company from nothing. I've negotiated with people who would ruin me for fun. I've stood in boardrooms full of men who wanted me to fail and refused to back down, but put a gun in front of me and I turned into a statue. Different kind of threat, Michael said. You can't negotiate with violence, can't talk your way through it or outthink it. Your brain knew that, so it shut down. It's not weakness, it's biology. That's generous. It's true. Michael took a sip of coffee and winced at how hot it was. You want to know what I think? I think you were in shock from the moment those lights went out. Your brain was trying to protect you by disconnecting you from reality. That's why you couldn't move. And when I covered you, when someone else took charge of keeping you safe, your brain could finally start processing again. That's why you could talk to me. Why you could function. Samantha was quiet for a long moment, turning the coffee cup in her hands. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. My son. I kept thinking about my son, that I'd never see him again, that he'd grow up without a mother the way I grew up without one. She swiped at her eyes quickly, angry at the tears. Sorry, I'm not usually like this. Don't apologize. Michael pulled a napkin from the dispenser and slid it across to her. You nearly died. You get to cry about it. She took the napkin but didn't use it, just held it in her fist like a talisman. How do you do it? How do you go through something like that and just function? You had your son with you. You must have been going out of your mind. Michael's jaw tightened at the memory. I was. But Owen needed me to be calm, so I was calm. That's the job. Being a parent means you don't get to fall apart until the kids are safe. Single parent? My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. The words still hurt to say, even after all this time. It was fast. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. Owen was 4. He barely remembers her now, and I don't know if that's better or worse. Samantha's expression softened with understanding. I'm divorced. My ex-husband wanted the company I was building, not the woman building it. When I wouldn't give him control, he left. Took half my assets and moved to Monaco with his secretary. She laughed bitterly. Cliché, right? I'm sorry. Don't be. Best thing that ever happened to me. Taught me that the only person I can really count on is myself. She paused, then added quietly, until Saturday. Saturday, I had to count on you, and you didn't let me down. Michael didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and drank his coffee. Around them, the coffee shop buzzed with conversation. Young professionals on laptops, college students studying, a mother bribing her toddler with a cookie. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that just days ago, the woman in the corner table had thought she was going to die. I want to do something for you, Samantha said suddenly. For you and Owen. I know you said you don't want money, but I don't. But I need to do something. You saved my life. That's not a debt I can just walk away from. Michael set down his coffee cup with more force than intended. It's not a debt at all. I didn't help you because I expected payment. I helped you because you needed help. That's it. I know that, but the world doesn't work on selflessness alone. You took a risk for me. Multiple risks. You could have been shot. Your son could have been orphaned. Don't you think that deserves something? What it deserves is for you to pay it forward. Michael leaned back in his chair, suddenly tired. Next time you see someone who needs help, help them. That's how you thank me. Samantha looked at him for a long moment, and Michael couldn't read the expression on her face. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. At least take this. My direct number is on the back. If you or Owen ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. Deal? Michael picked up the card. It was heavy stock, probably imported, with elegant lettering that read, Samantha Hale, CEO, Hale Industries. He'd never heard of Hale Industries, but then again, he didn't exactly move in circles where people handed out business cards. What does your company do? He asked, more to change the subject than genuine curiosity. Technology infrastructure. We build the systems that power other companies. Cloud storage, data security, network architecture. It's complicated and boring, which is why most people have never heard of us, even though we're in everything they use. Michael turned the card over. The phone number on the back was handwritten in neat, precise digits. He slipped it into his wallet, more to make her feel better than because he thought he'd ever use it. Okay, if I need anything, I'll call. Promise? Promise. They talked for another hour, the conversation drifting from the mall to Owen's soccer practice to Samantha's son, Marcus, 8 years old, obsessed with astronomy, and convinced he was going to be the first person to walk on Mars. Michael found himself relaxing despite his earlier discomfort. Samantha was easy to talk to once you got past the obvious wealth gap. She listened when he talked about Owen, asked thoughtful questions, shared her own parenting struggles with refreshing honesty. Marcus asked me why I couldn't just buy him a space shuttle, she said, laughing. He genuinely thought that because I run a company, I can just purchase NASA equipment. I had to explain that money doesn't actually work that way. Owen asked me for a toy dinosaur that costs $12 and cried when I said we had to wait until next month. Michael hadn't meant to say that, but the words came out anyway. He didn't understand why we couldn't just get it now. How do you explain poverty to a 7-year-old? Samantha's smile faded. You're struggling. It wasn't a question, and Michael felt his defenses rise. We're fine. Michael, we're fine, he repeated more firmly. We have enough food. Owen has clothes that fit, mostly. We make it work. But you work as a security guard at a mall, and you're raising a child alone, and you just got caught in a robbery that probably means you'll have trauma-related medical expenses you can't afford. Samantha leaned forward, her voice gentle but insistent. Let me help. Please. Even if you won't let me help you, let me help Owen. Let me buy him that dinosaur. No. Michael stood up, suddenly needing space. I appreciate the offer, but no. Owen is my responsibility. I take care of him. Taking help isn't the same as failing to provide. Yes, it is. The words came out sharper than intended. Look, I know you mean well, but I've spent 3 years making sure Owen has everything he needs. And I'm not going to take handouts now just because some billionaire feels guilty about something that wasn't her fault. Michael saw the word register on Samantha's face. Billionaire. She hadn't mentioned that part. He turned toward the door, needing to leave before he said something he'd regret. Wait. Samantha caught his arm, then immediately let go when he flinched. I'm sorry. I pushed too hard. She took a breath. I'm not good at this. At accepting help or giving it. I spent so many years clawing my way up that I forgot how to just be human with people. Michael turned back to her, seeing the genuine regret on her face. It's fine. I shouldn't have snapped at you. You had every right to. Samantha held out her hand. Can we start over? Just two people who went through something terrible and are trying to make sense of it? Michael shook her hand, feeling the delicate bones beneath her skin. Yeah, we can do that. They left the coffee shop together, walking out into the bright afternoon sunshine. Michael's Honda looked even more pathetic next to the sleek black Mercedes parked at the curb, no doubt Samantha's car. She followed his gaze and smiled ruefully. I know, it's ridiculous. I bought it to prove I'd made it, but now I just feel like an asshole every time I drive it. It's a nice car. It's a status symbol. There's a difference. Samantha clicked her key fob, and the Mercedes chirped. Thank you for meeting me, Michael. It helped. More than you know. You too. And surprisingly, he meant it. Talking about the mall, about the fear and the shock, had helped ease something in his chest that had been wound tight since Saturday. Samantha started to get in her car, then stopped. That man! The one who called the leader Marcus. The police said they're still looking for all three of them. They'll find them. Guys like that always make mistakes. I hope you're right. She bit her lip. I keep thinking about how he knew the layout, how he'd worked there. What if he comes back? What if he... He won't, Michael said firmly. He got what he wanted. Moving on to his next target is smarter than going back to the scene, and these guys, whatever else they are, they're not stupid. Samantha nodded, but Michael could see she wasn't convinced. He didn't blame her. In his experience, people who'd been through violence always waited for it to come back. That's what trauma did. It made you expect the other shoe to drop. If you need to talk, he found himself saying, about the nightmares or the fear or any of it, you have my number now too. Samantha's smile was genuine this time, reaching her eyes. Thank you. I might take you up on that. Michael watched her drive away, then walked to his own car. He had 15 minutes to get across town to pick up Owen from practice. If he hit traffic, he'd be late. And Owen hated waiting alone with the other kids getting picked up by their two-parent families in their nice cars with their put-together lives. But as Michael pulled out of the parking spot, his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Michael Carter? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yeah, who's this? My name is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Riverside Police Department. I'm calling about the incident at the mall on Saturday. We'd like you to come in and answer some follow-up questions. Michael's stomach sank. I already gave my statement at the scene. I understand, but some new information has come to light. We need to verify a few details. Would tomorrow morning work? Say, 9 o'clock? Michael thought about his work schedule, about the shift he was supposed to cover. I'll have to call in. My supervisor... We've already contacted your supervisor. He's aware you'll need the morning off. That was either very efficient or very concerning. Michael couldn't decide which. Okay, 9 o'clock. Should I bring anything? Just yourself? And Mr. Carter, we'd appreciate if you didn't discuss this call with anyone. Ongoing investigation. She hung up before he could respond. Michael sat in his car, staring at his phone, a cold feeling settling in his gut. New information. What new information? The robbery had been straightforward. 3 men, guns, jewelry store, failed heist. What else was there to know? His phone buzzed with a text. This time it was from his supervisor at the mall. Heard you're meeting with police tomorrow. FYI, corporate is asking questions about your involvement. Might want to think about what you tell them. Michael read the text 3 times, trying to parse the meaning. Was that a threat? A warning? What exactly was corporate asking about? He was still thinking about it when he pulled up to the soccer field. Owen ran over, his face flushed with exercise and happiness. Dad! Dad! I scored 2 goals. Coach Martinez said I'm getting really good. Michael pushed down his worry and smiled. That's amazing, buddy. Tell me all about it. As Owen chattered about soccer and his teammates and the snack coach had brought, Michael tried to focus on his son's joy. But part of his mind was already in that police station tomorrow, wondering what questions they'd ask and why his supervisor seemed worried about his answers. That night, after Owen was asleep, Michael sat on the couch and pulled out Samantha's business card. He stared at the handwritten number on the back, debating. She'd said to call if he needed anything. But what did he need? Answers he didn't have. Reassurance that whatever was happening wouldn't blow up his life. Maybe just someone to talk to who'd been there, who understood. Before he could talk himself out of it, Michael dialed the number. She answered on the second ring. Hello? It's Michael. Sorry to call so late. It's 8:30. That's not late. He heard rustling, like she was sitting up. Is everything okay? I don't know. The police called. They want me to come in tomorrow for more questions about the robbery. Said new information came to light. Silence on the other end. Then, they called me too. This afternoon, same thing. New information, need to verify details. Did they say what information? No, just that it was about one of the suspects. Another pause. Michael, I'm scared. What if they think we're involved somehow? What if... We're not suspects, Michael said, more confidently than he felt. We're witnesses. They probably just need clarification on something. It's standard procedure. You sound like you're trying to convince yourself as much as me. She wasn't wrong. Michael rubbed his eyes, exhaustion weighing on him. My supervisor sent me a weird text. Said corporate is asking questions about my involvement, like I did something wrong by helping you. That's ridiculous. You're a hero. Maybe hero isn't what they want. Maybe they want security guards who stay out of the way and let robberies happen without interfering. Then they're idiots. Samantha's voice had gone hard. If they even think about punishing you for what you did, You'll what? This is my job we're talking about. I can't afford to lose it. Then I'll make sure you don't. She said it with such certainty that Michael almost believed her. I'm serious, Michael. If your job is threatened because of what happened, you call me. I have lawyers who would love a case like this. Michael laughed despite himself. Billionaire lawyers? Yeah, that won't make me look even more suspicious. Better suspicious than unemployed. They talked for another 20 minutes, Samantha promising to text him after her police interview, Michael promising to do the same. When he finally hung up, Michael felt marginally better. At least he wasn't facing tomorrow alone. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to Owen's soft snoring from the other room, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening. Something that started with a robbery, but was growing into something else entirely. He just wished he knew what. Retry. The Riverside Police Department looked different in the harsh morning light than it had in Michael's imagination. He'd pictured something out of a crime drama, intimidating, stark, designed to make you feel guilty even if you weren't. Instead, it was just a tired municipal building with scuffed linoleum floors and fluorescent lights that buzzed too loudly. Michael checked in at the front desk, gave his name to a bored-looking officer, and was directed to wait in a lobby that smelled like burned coffee and desperation. He'd left Owen with Mrs. Chen, who'd insisted it was no trouble at all to watch him before school. But Owen had clung to Michael's leg at the door, his small face tight with worry that made Michael's chest ache. "You're not in trouble, right, Dad?" Owen had whispered. "The police only take bad people." Michael had knelt down, smoothing his son's hair back from his forehead. "I'm not in trouble, buddy. I'm just helping them catch the bad guys from the mall. Remember how we talked about doing the right thing? This is part of that." "But what if they don't believe you? What if they think you're bad?" The question had hit harder than it should have. "Then I'll tell them the truth until they do believe me." "The truth is the truth, Owen. It doesn't change just because someone doesn't want to hear it." Now, sitting in the police station waiting room, Michael wished he felt as confident as he'd sounded. His palms were sweating. His shoulder ached from where he'd landed on it during the robbery. And that cold feeling in his gut from yesterday had only gotten worse overnight. "Mr. Carter?" A woman appeared in the doorway, mid-40s, sharp eyes, dark hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. She wore a blazer over her detective's badge and carried a folder thick with papers. "I'm Detective Sarah Morrison. Thank you for coming in." Michael stood, wiping his palms on his jeans. "Of course, whatever I can do to help." She led him down a corridor lined with offices and interview rooms. Through one open door, Michael caught a glimpse of a wall covered in photographs. Crime scene images, he realized with a jolt, shattered glass, blood spatter, the jewelry store's destroyed display cases. Seeing the aftermath in stark, clinical detail made something twist in his stomach. Detective Morrison noticed his reaction. "Hard to look at, isn't it? Even when you were there. Harder, maybe. Because I know what it felt like. What it sounded like." Michael followed her into a small interview room. Table, 3 chairs, mirror on one wall that was obviously two-way glass. "Am I being recorded?" "Yes. Standard procedure. You're not under arrest or suspicion, Mr. Carter. This is just a formal interview to clarify some details." She gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. Can I get you coffee? Water?" "I'm fine." Michael sat, his back straight, hands on the table where she could see them. "Marine training again. In unfamiliar territory, you made yourself as non-threatening as possible." "You said new information came to light." Morrison opened her folder, pulled out several photographs, and laid them face down on the table. "Let's start with what you remember. Walk me through the incident again, from the moment you noticed something was wrong." Michael had told this story twice already, once at the scene, once in his written statement. But he told it again, keeping his voice steady, his details consistent. The 3 men entering, the lights going out, the first gunshot. Owen hiding behind the kiosk, the woman in white standing frozen by the jewelry store. And this woman, Morrison interrupted. Samantha Hale. You'd never met her before Saturday? Never. I didn't even know her name until she told me after the police arrived. But you ran toward her. Put yourself between her and the gunman. Why? Michael frowned at the question. Because she was in danger. Because if someone had started shooting, she would have been hit. What else would I do? Most people would have focused on protecting their own child. You left your son behind. The words stung, even though Michael knew they weren't meant as an accusation. I told Owen to hide. He was safe where he was. She wasn't. So you made a split-second decision to save a stranger's life instead of staying with your son. I made a decision to save someone who needed help while making sure my son was safe. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Morrison studied him for a long moment, then flipped over one of the photographs. It showed Samantha at the scene, her white coat covered in dust and small bloodstains, her face pale with shock. Did Ms. Hale say anything to you while you were covering her? Anything about why she might have been targeted? Michael's frown deepened. Targeted? This was a robbery. They were after jewelry, not people. Answer the question, please. No. She didn't say anything about being targeted. She was terrified. She thanked me for helping her. That's it. Michael leaned forward. What's going on here? You think this wasn't just a robbery? Morrison didn't answer. Instead, she flipped over another photograph. This one showed Marcus, the leader. His ski mask pulled up just enough to reveal his face. Michael recognized him immediately from those tense seconds when they'd locked eyes across the mall floor. Marcus Webb, Morrison said, age 32. Former employee of Prestige Jewelers, fired 5 years ago for theft. He served 2 years, got out on parole, and apparently decided to come back and finish what he started. She tapped the photo. Here's what's interesting. Webb had detailed knowledge of the store's layout, the security systems, even the timing of the guard rotations. But he made one mistake. He didn't know about the panic button that the manager had installed 6 months ago, a button that's only activated by biometric scan. Michael waited, sensing there was more. That panic button was triggered at exactly 2:47 p.m., 3 minutes before the robbery began, by someone inside the store, someone with authorized access. Morrison pulled out another photo. This one, a grainy security image of a woman's hand pressing a small device mounted under a counter. The manager wasn't there that day, so who triggered the panic button? I don't know. Someone who saw them coming? Someone who realized what was about to happen? Maybe. Or someone who was part of the plan. Someone who needed the police response to be fast and coordinated. Someone who wanted to make sure this robbery failed. Morrison's eyes were locked on Michael's face, watching for any reaction. Marcus Webb has a younger sister. She works in security consulting. 3 months ago, she got a contract with a tech company called Hale Industries. The name hit Michael like a physical blow. He sat back in his chair, his mind racing. You think Samantha Hale was involved in the robbery? I think it's an interesting coincidence that Marcus Webb's sister works for Samantha Hale's company, and that Samantha Hale just happened to be at the exact jewelry store her employee's brother was about to rob, at the exact time the robbery occurred, standing in the exact spot where she'd be most visible and most vulnerable. That's insane. Michael shook his head. I was there. She was terrified. That wasn't an act. People can be terrified and complicit at the same time, Mr. Carter. Fear doesn't equal innocence. So what, you think she staged this? That she wanted to be held at gunpoint and nearly shot? For what purpose? Morrison pulled out one final photograph, and this one made Michael's blood run cold. It showed Samantha at what looked like a press conference, standing at a podium with the Riverside police chief beside her. The caption read, Hale Industries announces $5 million security grant. 3 days after the robbery, Morrison said quietly, Samantha Hale held a press conference announcing a major donation to improve mall security across the city. She positioned herself as a hero who survived a traumatic incident and was now giving back. The media ate it up. Her company's stock jumped 12%. She's been on every major news outlet, telling her story about the brave security guard who saved her life. Michael stared at the photograph, his mind refusing to process what Morrison was implying. You think she used me? You think the whole thing was staged to make her look good? I think someone knew that robbery was going to happen. I think someone made sure the response was coordinated and fast. And I think someone has benefited enormously from being the sympathetic victim. Morrison leaned forward. I need you to tell me the truth, Mr. Carter. Did Samantha Hale contact you before the robbery? Did she ask you to be there, to protect her, to play the hero? No. The word came out hard, definitive. I met her that day. I helped her because she needed help. That's the truth. Then why did she give you her personal phone number? Why did she insist on meeting with you? What exactly did you two talk about at that coffee shop yesterday? Michael felt the walls closing in. Every innocent action suddenly looked suspicious when viewed through Morrison's lens. She wanted to thank me. We talked about the trauma, about our kids, about normal things. There was no conspiracy. But she offered you money, didn't she? She tried to pay you for saving her. And I turned it down. Why? Because I don't want her money. Because I helped her. Because it was the right thing to do. Not because I expected payment. Michael's voice rose despite his effort to stay calm. Look, I don't know what you think is going on here, but I'm telling you, Samantha Hale was a victim. I was a witness. If someone in her company is connected to the robbery, that's not her fault. Unless she knew, Morrison said softly. Unless she hired Webb's sister specifically because of that connection. Unless this whole thing was orchestrated to generate positive publicity and increase her company's value. That's crazy. Is it? Billionaires have done worse for less. Morrison gathered up the photographs and slid them back into her folder. Here's what I know, Mr. Carter. You're either a genuine hero who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time, or you're part of something bigger that you haven't told me about. Either way, I need you to be very careful about your relationship with Samantha Hale going forward. I don't have a relationship with her. You have her personal phone number. You met her for coffee. She's been asking about you. My colleagues in the media liaison office say she mentions you in every interview. Morrison stood up, and Michael realized the formal interview was over. I'm not accusing you of anything, but I am warning you that this investigation is ongoing and that associating with someone under scrutiny could complicate your life considerably. Michael stood too, his legs unsteady. Am I free to go? Of course. Like I said, you're not under suspicion, but if Ms. Hale contacts you again, I'd appreciate if you'd let me know what you discuss. And if you remember anything else from the robbery, anything at all, call me immediately. She handed him a business card. Day or night. Michael took the card and walked out of the interview room on autopilot. His mind was spinning, trying to reconcile the terrified woman he'd protected with the calculated manipulator Morrison had described. It didn't fit. The fear in Samantha's eyes had been real. The way her hands shook when she thanked him had been genuine. Unless she was the best actress he'd ever met, there was no way she'd staged her own near-death experience. But doubt was a poison, and Morrison had injected it directly into his veins. Now every interaction with Samantha took on a different shade. The way she'd insisted on giving him her number, the coffee meeting, her immediate mention of her company and her success. Had any of it been real, or had she been playing him from the start? Michael's phone buzzed as he reached his car. Text from Samantha. Just finished with the police. They asked me some very strange questions. Can we talk? Michael stared at the message for a long moment, Morrison's warnings echoing in his head. Then he typed back, "Not right now. Need to think." The reply came immediately. "Did they tell you about Webb's sister? About her working for my company?" "Michael, I swear I didn't know. I have 3,000 employees. I don't personally vet everyone in security consulting." He believed her. Or he wanted to believe her. Michael couldn't tell the difference anymore. Instead of responding, he drove to pick up Owen from Mrs. Chen's apartment. His son came running out with his backpack already on, chattering about the pancakes Mrs. Chen had made for breakfast. Michael held Owen's hand as they walked to the car, grateful for the simple reality of his son's presence. Something real and uncomplicated in a morning that had turned everything else upside down. "Dad, you're squeezing too hard," Owen said, and Michael realized he'd been gripping his son's hand like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. "Sorry, buddy." He loosened his grip but didn't let go. "How about we play hooky today? Skip work, skip school, just hang out together?" Owen's eyes went wide with delight. Really? We can do that? Today we can. Michael needed his son close, needed to remember why he'd thrown himself in front of bullets in the first place. Not for publicity or money or some grand gesture, but because protecting people was what he did. It was who he was. They spent the day at the park, then got ice cream even though Michael couldn't really afford it, then went home and built a massive fort out of couch cushions and blankets. Owen laughed and played and was 7 years old again, not the scared kid from the mall. Michael tried to focus on that, tried to let his son's joy wash away the paranoia Morrison had planted. But that night, after Owen fell asleep in the pillow fort, Michael sat on the floor with his laptop and did what he should have done days ago. He searched for Samantha Hale. The results were overwhelming. Hundreds of articles, interviews, profiles, in business magazines. Tech's hidden titan. The woman behind your data. How Samantha Hale built a billion-dollar company in 10 years. Michael clicked through them, reading about her meteoric rise from junior programmer to CEO, about her ruthless business tactics, and her reputation for acquiring smaller companies and stripping them for parts. One article from 2 years ago caught his attention. Hale Industries accused of corporate espionage. Lawsuit dismissed. Michael read about allegations that Samantha had stolen proprietary technology from a competitor, that she'd hired their employees specifically to gain access to trade secrets. The case had been thrown out for lack of evidence, but the article painted her as someone who would do anything, absolutely anything, to win. Then Michael found the recent coverage, all dated within the past 3 days. Every major outlet had run the story of the mall robbery, and Samantha featured prominently in each one. But what struck Michael was how carefully she'd crafted her narrative. In every interview, she mentioned his name. Michael Carter, a security guard and former Marine, risked his life to save mine. She'd made him part of her story, had elevated him from anonymous bystander to named hero. Why? Michael found the press conference video that Morrison had mentioned. Samantha stood at the podium looking polished and professional, every hair in place, speaking with measured emotion about her near-death experience and her commitment to making public spaces safer. Behind her stood the police chief, the mayor, and several other officials. The whole thing looked staged, rehearsed, perfect. "I want to personally thank Michael Carter," Samantha said into the cameras, "who showed incredible courage in the face of danger. His actions remind us that heroism isn't about wealth or status, it's about character, and that's something no amount of money can buy." The irony wasn't lost on Michael. She was using his poverty, his lack of wealth and status, as proof of his authenticity, which made her look better by association, the billionaire who recognized the working-class hero. It was a perfect public relations narrative. Michael closed his laptop, feeling sick. He didn't want to believe Morrison's theory, didn't want to think that Samantha had orchestrated the robbery, had positioned herself as the victim, had used him as an unwitting prop in her publicity stunt. But he couldn't unsee what he'd just learned, couldn't unknow the pattern of manipulation that seemed to follow her wherever she went. His phone rang, shattering the silence. Samantha's number. Michael let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hello?" "Michael, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day." Her voice was tight with stress. "The police detective, Morrison, she thinks I was involved in the robbery somehow. She thinks I staged the whole thing. You don't believe that, do you?" "I don't know what to believe anymore." The silence on the other end stretched so long Michael thought she'd hung up. Then, "They got to you. They made you doubt me. They showed me evidence. They connected dots. They made me ask questions I should have asked from the beginning." "What questions?" "Like why you were at that mall at that exact time. Like why Marcus Webb's sister works for your company. Like why you've spent the past 3 days turning me into some kind of media hero when I specifically said I didn't want that." "I never said your name to the media," Samantha protested. "They found out on their own. They interviewed other witnesses. They pulled records. You said my name at the press conference. I watched the video." Another long pause. When Samantha spoke again, her voice was colder. "So that's it? One conversation with a detective and you've decided I'm some kind of criminal mastermind? Never mind that I nearly died. Never mind that you saw how scared I was." People can fake fear, apparently. People can stage anything if they want it badly enough. "And you think I wanted to be held at gunpoint?" You think I wanted to feel a bullet pass inches from my head? For what, Michael? For publicity? I'm already successful. I don't need a near-death experience to boost my company's profile. Your stock went up 12%. My stock fluctuates all the time. That's how markets work. Samantha's voice cracked slightly. I called you because I thought you'd understand. Because you were there. Because you're the only person who knows what it felt like to be on that floor waiting to die. But I guess I was wrong about you. Maybe you were wrong about me being useful to your narrative. The words came out harsher than Michael intended, but he couldn't take them back. He heard Samantha's sharp intake of breath, heard her anger finally breaking through. You know what? Fine. Believe what you want. Believe I'm some kind of monster who stages robberies for publicity. Believe I used you. Believe whatever makes you feel better about the fact that accepting help from someone successful makes you uncomfortable. Her voice was shaking now. But let me tell you something, Michael Carter. When I was lying on that floor convinced I was going to die, the only thought in my head was my son, not my company, not my stock price, my son. So whatever the police told you, whatever dots they connected, they're wrong. I was a victim, and you saved my life. That's the truth, whether you believe it or not. She hung up before he could respond. Michael sat in the darkness of his living room, Owen's soft breathing coming from the pillow fort, and wondered if he'd just made a terrible mistake. His phone buzzed with a text. Not from Samantha, from his supervisor at the mall. Need to see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., my office, it's important. Michael's stomach dropped. He texted back, about what? The response came after 5 agonizing minutes. Corporate has some concerns about your continued employment. We need to discuss your future with the company. Michael read the message 3 times, each time feeling the walls close in tighter. They were going to fire him. For helping someone. For being a hero. For doing exactly what anyone with a conscience would have done. He thought about calling Samantha back, thought about apologizing and asking for her help. But pride stopped him. Or maybe it was fear. Fear that if he accepted her help now, it would prove Morrison right, that he was part of whatever scheme the detective thought was happening. Instead, Michael did what he always did when his back was against the wall. He pulled out his laptop and started looking for new jobs. Security positions, warehouse work, anything that would pay the bills and let him keep Owen fed and safe. But every listing required experience he didn't have or qualifications he couldn't afford to get. The few that matched his skills paid less than what he was already making, and he could barely survive on his current salary. By 2 a.m., Michael gave up and crawled into the pillow fort next to Owen. His son stirred, mumbling something about dinosaurs, and snuggled closer. Michael wrapped his arm around Owen and stared at the blanket ceiling, wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. 4 days ago, he'd been nobody, just another single dad struggling to get by. Now he was caught between a detective who thought he was part of a conspiracy and a billionaire who might or might not have used him as a pawn in her public relations game. His job was in jeopardy, his name was in the media, and he had no idea who to trust or what to believe. The only thing Michael knew for certain was that he'd do it all again. If he could go back to that moment in the mall, knowing everything he knew now, he'd still throw himself over Samantha Hale. Because that's what you did when someone needed help. That was the only truth that mattered, even if it cost him everything. The morning came too soon. Michael dropped Owen at school with a promise to pick him up on time, then drove to the mall for what he suspected would be his last day as an employee. His supervisor, Derek Chen, Mrs. Chen's nephew, which was how Michael had gotten the job in the first place, looked miserable when Michael walked into his office. "Mike, sit down." Derek gestured to the chair across from his desk, and Michael noticed the HR representative sitting in the corner. Never a good sign. "Just tell me," Michael said. "Am I fired?" Derek exchanged a glance with the HR rep, then sighed. Corporate is concerned about liability. The incident on Saturday put the company in a difficult position. There are questions about whether proper protocols were followed, whether security personnel exceeded their authority. I wasn't working that day. I was shopping with my son. But you're employed by the mall, which means your actions reflect on us. And your involvement has brought significant media attention that corporate finds problematic. Derek looked down at his hands. They're offering a severance package, 3 months' salary, and they'll agree not to contest unemployment. In exchange for what? My silence? The HR rep spoke up for the first time. In exchange for your signature on a non-disclosure agreement regarding the incident and your employment here. No media interviews, no public statements, no cooperation with any investigations beyond what's legally required. Michael felt anger surge through his chest. They want me to shut up, to pretend nothing happened, to let them sweep this whole thing under the rug so they don't have to deal with questions about their security failures. They want to protect the company, the HR rep said primly, and to offer you a fair exit. Fair? Michael stood up, his hands clenched into fists. I've worked here for 3 years. I've never been late, never called in sick until this week, never caused a single problem, and you're firing me because I saved someone's life? We're not firing you. Yes, you are. You're just calling it something else. Michael looked at Derek, who couldn't meet his eyes. Does your aunt know about this? Except protecting their bottom line. Then I guess there's nothing left to say. Michael turned toward the door. The severance package, the HR rep called after him. You need to sign, email it to me. I'll have a lawyer look at it. He didn't have a lawyer, couldn't afford one, but the lie felt good. Felt like taking back some small measure of control. Michael walked out of the mall for what might be the last time, past the jewelry store where workers were still repairing the damaged displays, past the kiosk where he'd hidden Owen, past the spot where Samantha had stood frozen with fear. Everything looked normal now. Shoppers browsed and laughed and lived their lives, completely unaware that 4 days ago this place had been a war zone. His phone rang as he reached his car. Unknown number, but Michael was past caring about being cautious. Hello? Mr. Carter, this is Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. I was hoping to schedule an interview about your heroic actions at the Riverside Mall robbery. We're doing a special segment on everyday heroes, and I'm not interested. We'd be happy to compensate you for your time. Our standard rate is... I said I'm not interested. Michael hung up and immediately blocked the number. 3 more calls came in the next 5 minutes, all from different news outlets. Michael blocked them all. Morrison's warning echoed in his head. Associating with Samantha had complicated his life considerably. But it wasn't Samantha's fault. It was the media's fault. The corporate lawyer's fault. The system's fault for punishing people who did the right thing. By the time Michael pulled into his apartment building's parking lot, he'd received 7 interview requests, 3 book deal inquiries, and 1 marriage proposal from someone who'd seen his photo in the paper. He turned off his phone and sat in his car, trying to figure out what to do next. Without his mall job, he had maybe 2 months of savings before he couldn't make rent. Finding new work would take time he didn't have. He could sell the car, but then how would he get Owen to school or himself to job interviews? He could ask Mrs. Chen for help, but she was already struggling with her own expenses. His phone buzzed despite being turned off. No, not his phone. The vibration was coming from his wallet. Michael pulled it out, confused, and found Samantha's business card. Except the card wasn't vibrating. His fingers had just been resting on it when his phone buzzed one more time before fully powering down. Michael stared at the card, at the handwritten number on the back, and made a decision he hoped he wouldn't regret. He turned his phone back on and dialed. Retry. Samantha answered on the first ring, her voice clipped and professional. Samantha Hale. It's Michael. He closed his eyes, hating that he was doing this. I'm sorry. About last night. About what I said. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Then Samantha's voice came back softer, uncertain. Are you calling because you believe me, or because you need something? The question was fair, and Michael respected her for asking it. Both. They fired me. The mall, they're letting me go because of the media attention, because I made them look bad by being involved. Those bastards. The anger in her voice was immediate and fierce. They can't do that. What you did had nothing to do with your employment. You weren't even working that day. Doesn't matter. They found a way to make it about liability and corporate image. They're offering severance if I sign an NDA. Michael leaned his head back against the car seat. I don't know what to do. I can't afford a lawyer to fight it, and even if I could, I can't afford to be unemployed while the case drags out. Owen needs to eat. Rent needs to be paid. Don't sign anything. Samantha's voice had shifted into command mode, the CEO coming through. How long do you have before you need to respond? They said by end of day Friday. That's 2 days. Good. That gives me time. He heard rustling, like she was moving papers around. I'm going to send someone to look at their severance offer. Someone who owes me a favor and won't charge you a dime. And Michael, we're going to fix this. I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's what you do for people who've been wronged. She paused. And I meant what I said before, about you saving my life. I know you don't trust me right now, and I understand why. But I need you to understand something too. I didn't stage that robbery. I didn't use you. And I sure as hell didn't expect any of this to happen. Well, Michael wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe her. The detective said, I know what the detective said. She said the same things to me. About Webb's sister, about the timing, about the stock price. And here's what I told her. Yes, Amanda Webb works for my company. She's one of 3,000 employees. I hired her because she had good credentials and her contract bid was competitive. I had no idea she was related to Marcus Webb until the police told me. Why would I? I don't run background checks on every applicant's siblings. But the panic button was triggered by the assistant manager, who happened to be in the back room doing inventory when the power went out. She saw the men coming through the security monitors and hit the button before hiding. The police confirmed this yesterday, but Morrison conveniently left that out of her interview with you. Samantha's voice was tight with frustration. She's building a case that doesn't exist because it makes better headlines than random robbery fails. The media loves conspiracy theories, especially ones involving rich people. Michael rubbed his eyes, exhaustion seeping into his bones. I don't know what's real anymore. I know the feeling. Samantha's voice softened. Look, I'm not perfect. I've made business decisions that hurt people. I've been ruthless when I needed to be. But I draw the line at staging my own attempted murder for publicity. That's not just wrong, it's insane. The articles I read about you, Michael said slowly, about the corporate espionage allegations, about the way you do business, they painted you as someone who'd do anything to win. And they weren't entirely wrong. In business, I am cutthroat. I buy companies and strip them down to their valuable parts. I poach talent from competitors. I play hardball in negotiations. She took a breath. But there's a difference between aggressive business tactics and criminal conspiracy. I've never crossed that line, Michael. Never. Michael sat with that for a moment, listening to his own breathing, trying to sort truth from manipulation. Finally, he said, Okay. Okay? I believe you, or at least I'm choosing to believe you until I have concrete proof otherwise, because the alternative is driving me crazy, and I'm too tired to be paranoid anymore. He heard Samantha exhale, like she'd been holding her breath. Thank you. I know that's not easy after everything Morrison told you. Morrison is doing her job. Maybe she's seeing connections that aren't there, or maybe there's something else going on that neither of us understands yet. But either way, I can't spend my life second-guessing everyone's motives. Michael glanced at his apartment building, where Owen would be coming home from school in a few hours, expecting dinner and normalcy. I have bigger problems right now, like figuring out how to keep a roof over my son's head. The lawyer I'm sending, his name is Robert Klein. He'll call you within the hour. He's handled cases like this before, and he's very good. Samantha paused. And Michael, I have a job opening, if you're interested. Michael's hand tightened on the phone. What kind of job? Security operations consultant. I wasn't lying when I mentioned it at the coffee shop. We're expanding our physical security division, building out protocols for corporate campuses, developing training programs, consulting on emergency response. I need someone with real-world experience, someone who knows how to keep people safe when things go wrong. And you just happen to have this position open right when I lost my job? I've had it open for 2 months. We've interviewed 6 candidates, and none of them had the right combination of skills and instincts. But you do. Her voice was matter-of-fact, professional. The pay is $85,000 a year, full benefits, 3 weeks paid vacation. The hours are better than mall security, mostly 9 to 5, occasional evening meetings. And before you ask, no, this isn't charity. You'd be working, probably harder than you've worked in years. Michael did the math in his head. $85,000 was more than double his mall salary. It was enough to move to a better apartment, to buy Owen new clothes that actually fit, to stop choosing between groceries and electricity. It was stability, security, everything he'd been struggling to provide. It was also too good to be true. "Why me?" Michael asked. "You said you interviewed 6 other candidates, people with actual corporate security experience, probably. What makes you think I can do this job?" "Because when chaos erupted around you, you didn't freeze. You assessed the situation, protected the vulnerable, and made tactical decisions under pressure. That's not something you can learn in a classroom or fake in an interview. That's instinct combined with training, and it's exactly what I need." Samantha's voice grew more animated, like she was warming to the pitch. "Most security consultants focus on preventing problems, but I need someone who knows how to handle problems when prevention fails. Someone who's seen real violence, real danger, and knows how to keep people alive through it." "I'm not a hero, Samantha. What happened at the mall? That was one moment, one decision. It doesn't make me qualified to build security programs for a billion-dollar company." "No, but your 7 years as a Marine do. Your combat experience does. Your ability to stay calm when everyone else is panicking does." She let that sink in, then added quietly, "I watched the security footage from the mall. All of it. The way you moved, the way you positioned yourself, the way you read the situation. That's not luck, Michael. That's expertise." Michael felt something shift in his chest. For 3 years, he'd been overqualified and underpaid, working a job that used maybe 10% of his actual skills. He told himself it was enough, that providing for Owen mattered more than personal fulfillment. But hearing someone recognize what he was capable of, hearing someone say his experience had value beyond checking receipts and breaking up fights between teenagers, it hit harder than he expected. "I need to think about it," he said, even though part of him wanted to say yes immediately. "Of course. Take your time. Talk to Robert about the severance package first. See what he says." "But Michael, the offer stands regardless of what you decide about the mall. This isn't contingent on you signing an NDA or staying quiet or anything else. This is just a job offer from someone who thinks you'd be good at the job." "Okay." Michael's throat felt tight. "Thank you for believing in me, for this opportunity. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see how much work it actually is. I'm a demanding boss and I have very high standards." But he could hear the smile in her voice. "Robert will call soon. And Michael, we're going to fix this. All of it." She hung up, and Michael sat in his car staring at his phone, trying to process what had just happened. An hour ago, he'd been spiraling into panic about unemployment and bills and his son's future. Now he had a potential way forward, a better way forward than anything he'd dared to hope for. If he could trust it. If Samantha was telling the truth. If this wasn't somehow part of whatever Morrison suspected was happening. Michael's phone rang 17 minutes later. Robert Klein had a voice like gravel and got straight to the point. "Samantha told me about your situation. I need you to forward me everything the mall sent you. The termination letter, the severance offer, the NDA. Do it now while we're on the phone." Michael pulled up his email and sent the documents. He heard typing on the other end, then a low whistle. "Well, they're not subtle about it. This NDA is garbage, way too broad, probably unenforceable. And the severance is insulting given your tenure and circumstances." More typing. "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to draft a counteroffer. We'll ask for 6 months severance instead of 3, full continuation of benefits during that period, and a neutral employment reference. In exchange, you'll sign a narrower NDA that only covers proprietary company information, not your personal experience at the mall." They won't go for that. They will if the alternative is a wrongful termination lawsuit that generates exactly the kind of media attention they're trying to avoid. Trust me, corporate legal departments hate bad press more than they hate paying settlements. Robert's voice held grim satisfaction. "Let me handle this. Don't respond to anything from the mall without running it by me first." "And Michael, Samantha was right to call me. What they're doing to you is reprehensible." "So you think I have a case?" "I think you have enough of a case that they'll settle rather than fight it, which is exactly what we want." Robert paused. "Are you really considering her job offer? You know about that?" "Samantha mentioned it might come up. My advice? Take it. Hale Industries is a good company to work for, demanding but fair, and the pay is solid." Another pause. "Also, between you and me, Samantha doesn't offer jobs to people she doesn't genuinely think can do the work. She's too ruthless to let sentiment cloud her business judgment. That assessment matched what Michael had read in the articles about her. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it just reminded him how out of his depth he was in this world of corporate maneuvering and strategic decisions. Thanks, Robert, for helping me. Don't thank me. Thanks, Samantha. She's the one who called in the favor. Robert hung up before Michael could respond. Michael finally dragged himself out of the car and up to his apartment. He had 2 hours before Owen got home. 2 hours to process everything and figure out how to explain to his son that his dad had lost his job, but maybe, had found something better. He made grilled cheese sandwiches for dinner because it was cheap and easy, and Owen loved them. When his son came home, chattering about science class and a kid named Tyler who'd brought his pet lizard for show and tell, Michael let the normalcy wash over him. They ate dinner, they did homework. They played 3 rounds of Go Fish before bath time. It wasn't until Owen was in bed, lights out, that his son asked the question Michael had been dreading. Dad, are we okay? Michael sat on the edge of Owen's bed, smoothing his son's hair back from his forehead. What do you mean, buddy? I heard you on the phone today. When Mrs. Chen walked me home from school, you said something about getting fired and not being able to pay rent. Owen's voice was small in the darkness. Are we going to be homeless? Michael's heart cracked. He'd thought Owen hadn't heard, thought he'd been careful. But kids always heard the things you tried to hide from them. Nobody. We're not going to be homeless. Michael kept his voice steady and sure. I did lose my job at the mall, but I might have a new job lined up, a better one. Really? Really. The lady I helped at the mall, she has a company and she thinks I'd be good at helping keep people safe, so we're going to be okay. Owen was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, is she nice, the lady? Michael thought about Samantha, about her fear on the mall floor, about her anger at the police accusations, about her immediate response to help him when he needed it. Yeah, he said slowly. I think she is. In her own way. Good. I'm glad you have a friend. Owen yawned, already drifting towards sleep. You're always taking care of me. It's good if someone takes care of you too. The simple wisdom of it hit Michael harder than any of the day's revelations. Owen was right. He'd spent 3 years being everything for his son, provider, protector, playmate, parent. He hadn't let anyone help him, hadn't built any kind of support system beyond Mrs. Chen's occasional babysitting. He'd been so determined to prove he could handle everything alone that he'd forgotten how to accept help from anyone. Maybe that was the real reason he'd been so suspicious of Samantha. Not because she was rich or potentially manipulative, but because accepting her help meant admitting he couldn't do everything by himself, meant acknowledging that he needed someone in his corner. You're pretty smart for 7 years old, Michael whispered, kissing Owen's forehead. I know, Owen mumbled, already half asleep. I get it from you. Michael sat there in the darkness long after Owen's breathing had evened out into sleep, thinking about everything that had happened in less than a week. A mall robbery, a near-death experience, media attention he never wanted, police suspicion, job loss, and somehow, through all of it, a connection with someone who existed in a completely different world but understood what it felt like to be scared, to be vulnerable, to be human. His phone buzzed with an email notification. Robert Klein had sent the counterproposal to the mall's legal department, copying Michael on everything. The email was professional and devastating, laying out exactly why their original offer was insufficient and what they'd need to provide to avoid litigation. Michael had never seen anything like it. Each paragraph was a precisely aimed strike at their legal position. No wonder Samantha had said Robert was good. The next 2 days passed in a strange limbo. Michael took Owen to school, came home, and waited. Waited for the mall to respond to Robert's counteroffer. Waited for Detective Morrison to call with more questions. Waited for the media request to stop flooding his phone. Waited for some indication that his life was going to stabilize. Robert called Thursday afternoon with an update. They're negotiating. That's good. Means they're taking the counteroffer seriously. I think we'll have a deal by tomorrow. Samantha texted Thursday night, a simple message. How are you holding up? Michael stared at it for a long time before responding. Okay, waiting. Not sure what I'm waiting for, but waiting. That's the worst part. The in-between space where nothing is resolved but everything feels uncertain. Yeah. For what it's worth, I meant what I said about the job, regardless of what happens with the mall. Michael typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why does it matter to you? What happens to me? You've done more than enough. You don't owe me anything else." The response took several minutes. When it came, it was longer than her usual texts. "Because when I was lying on that floor, I thought I was going to die. And the last thought I had before you covered me wasn't about my company or my money or my success. It was about my son growing up without a mother, about him remembering me as someone who worked all the time and missed his childhood. And then you saved me, and I got a second chance to be better, to be present, to matter for reasons that have nothing to do with quarterly earnings or market share. So helping you isn't about owing you, it's about being the person I want to be with this second chance." Michael read the message 3 times, feeling something shift in his understanding of Samantha Hale. She wasn't just a billionaire CEO playing games with people's lives. She was a mother who'd faced her own mortality and was trying to figure out what mattered in the aftermath, just like he was. "Thank you for telling me that," he typed back. "It helps." "Good. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a big day." She was right. Friday morning, Robert called with news that the mall had accepted their counteroffer. 6 months severance, benefits continuation, and a narrowly focused NDA that wouldn't prevent Michael from talking about his personal experience. All he had to do was sign the agreement and it would be done. "They caved faster than I expected," Robert said, "which tells me they were more worried about the potential lawsuit than they let on. You could probably have pushed for more, but my recommendation is to take this and move on. 6 months gives you breathing room to find something else." "Or to try something new," Michael said. "So you're taking Samantha's offer?" "I think I am, if it's still available." "Call her," Robert advised. "She'll be happy to hear it." Michael hung up and immediately dialed Samantha's number. She answered instantly, like she'd been waiting for his call. "It's done," he said without preamble. "The mall's settled, and I want to take the job, if you still want me. When can you start?" No hesitation, no second guessing, just immediate acceptance. "Monday?" "Perfect. I'll have HR send you the formal offer letter and benefits package today. You'll need to come in Monday morning to fill out paperwork and meet the team. Dress business casual. We're not formal, but we're not jeans and t-shirts either." She was all business now, her CEO voice firmly in place. "Michael, you won't regret this." "I hope not." "You won't, I promise." After they hung up, Michael sat at his kitchen table with the signed severance agreement in front of him and tried to process the fact that his life had just completely changed direction. A week ago, he'd been a mall security guard barely making ends meet. Now he was about to be a corporate security consultant for a billion-dollar tech company, making more money than he'd ever dreamed possible. It felt surreal, like he'd stepped into someone else's life. Owen came home from school to find Michael cooking a real dinner. Not mac and cheese or hot dogs, but actual chicken and vegetables and rice. His son's eyes went wide. "What's the special occasion?" "I got the new job," Michael said, grinning. "The one with the lady from the mall, starting Monday." Owen whooped and ran to hug Michael's waist. "Does this mean we can get the dinosaur now?" Michael laughed, feeling lighter than he had in days. "You know what? Let's get the dinosaur, and maybe some ice cream to celebrate." They drove to the toy store, the actual toy store, not just the mall kiosk, and let Owen pick out not just the dinosaur he'd been wanting, but a whole set of prehistoric creatures. Michael watched his son's face light up as he examined each figure, carefully reading the information cards and deciding which ones would fight and which ones would be friends. This was what the job was really about. Not the salary or the title or the prestige. It was about being able to say yes when his son asked for a $12 toy. It was about not having to choose between dinner and electricity. It was about building a life where Owen could be a kid without carrying the weight of their financial struggles. At the checkout, Owen clutched his dinosaurs and looked up at Michael with shining eyes. "Thank you, Dad. This is the best day ever." "You're welcome, buddy." Michael ruffled his son's hair, feeling the last of his doubts about accepting Samantha's offer fade away. "You know what? I think it might be." They got ice cream after, sitting outside the shop in the spring evening sun, and Michael let himself imagine what the future might look like. A better apartment, maybe with 2 bedrooms so Owen could have his own space. School supplies bought new instead of secondhand. Maybe even a real vacation someday, not just day trips to the local park. For the first time in 3 years, Michael felt like he could breathe, like the constant weight of barely surviving had lifted just enough to let him think about actually living. His phone buzzed with an email from Hale Industries HR. The formal offer letter, complete with salary details, benefits package, and his official title, Senior Security Operations Consultant. Michael skimmed through it, his eyes catching on phrases like comprehensive health insurance and 401k matching and professional development budget. These were things he'd heard about but never actually had access to, the benefits that came with real corporate jobs. Owen noticed his dad staring at his phone. Is that about the new job? Yeah, they sent me all the official paperwork. Are you happy, Dad? Michael looked at his son, at the chocolate ice cream smeared on his chin and the pure joy on his face, and felt something warm expand in his chest. Yeah, buddy, I'm happy. That night, after Owen fell asleep surrounded by his new dinosaurs, Michael called Samantha one more time. I read through the offer letter, he said when she answered. The benefits package alone is more than I was making annually at the mall. We take care of our people. High standards, but high compensation to match. She paused. Are you getting nervous? Second thoughts? Terrified, actually. I keep thinking I'm going to show up Monday and realize I'm completely out of my depth, that I'm a mall security guard pretending to belong in corporate boardrooms. Good. Good? If you weren't nervous, I'd be worried. Means you understand the scope of what you're taking on. Samantha's voice was steady, reassuring. But Michael, you earned this position, not because you saved my life. That has nothing to do with your qualifications. You earned it because you have skills and experience that most people will never have. You've seen real violence and handled it. You've made life or death decisions under pressure. That's not something they teach in business school. I hope you're right. I am. She said it with such certainty that Michael almost believed her. Get some rest. Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Don't be late. Yes, ma'am. And Michael, welcome to Hale Industries. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Michael bought 2 new shirts and a pair of dress pants that actually fit properly. He got a haircut. He researched the company online, reading everything he could find about their security division and what they did. He practiced explaining his background without sounding like he was reciting a resume. By Sunday night, he was more nervous than he'd been before his first combat deployment. At least in the Marines, he'd known what to expect. This was completely new territory. Owen sensed his father's anxiety and crawled into bed with him Sunday night, something he hadn't done in months. You're going to be great, Dad, Owen said seriously. You're the bravest person I know. Thanks, buddy, but this isn't about being brave. This is about being smart and professional and not embarrassing myself. You're smart too, and you're always professional with me. You say please and thank you and everything. Owen thought about it. And you can't be more embarrassing than Tyler's dad, who showed up to career day dressed as a banana. Michael laughed despite his nerves. That's a pretty low bar, but I'll take it. They fell asleep like that, Michael holding his son close and trying to believe that everything was going to work out. That he could do this job, could provide for Owen, could build a better life than what they'd had. That maybe, just maybe, helping a stranger in a moment of crisis had been the thing that changed everything. Monday morning came too soon. Michael dropped Owen at school with promises to tell him everything about the new job later, then drove across the city to Hale Industries headquarters. The building was modern glass and steel, 15 stories of corporate success, and Michael's beat-up Honda looked ridiculous in the parking garage next to BMWs and Teslas. He took the elevator to the 10th floor, where HR had told him to report. The doors opened onto a bright, open office space. Nothing like the dingy mall security office, with its flickering lights and ancient coffee maker. People moved purposefully through corridors, carrying tablets and coffee cups, looking professional and confident and like they absolutely belonged there. Michael stepped out of the elevator, feeling like an imposter. Michael Carter? A woman in her 30s approached, hand extended. I'm Jennifer Park, your HR liaison. Welcome to Hale Industries. How are you feeling? Honestly, like I might throw up, Jennifer laughed. That's normal. First day nerves are real, but you're going to do great. Samantha only hires the best. She gestured toward a conference room. Let's get your paperwork started, then I'll take you on a tour and introduce you to your team. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of forms and signatures and benefit elections and security badges. Jennifer walked him through everything with practiced efficiency, answering his questions about health insurance and retirement contributions with patience. When they finally finished, she led him on a tour of the building, pointing out cafeterias and conference rooms and quiet spaces for focused work. "Your office is on the 12th floor," Jennifer said as they rode the elevator up. "The entire security division is up here. You'll be working with a team of 6 other consultants plus support staff. Your direct supervisor is Marcus Webb." She stopped abruptly, her face paling. "I'm sorry, that's wrong. That position is currently vacant. You'll report directly to Samantha until we fill it." Michael felt ice slide down his spine. "Marcus Webb. As in Marcus Webb who robbed the mall?" Jennifer looked miserable. "He was hired 4 months ago. Obviously, his employment has been terminated and all his access revoked. But yes, he was briefly our security operations manager, which is unfortunate timing. That's one word for it. Samantha will explain everything. She wanted to be the one to tell you herself." Jennifer wouldn't meet his eyes. "She's waiting in your office." They found Samantha standing by the window in what was apparently Michael's new office, a real office with a door and a desk and a view of the city. She turned when they entered, and Michael saw the apprehension on her face. "Thank you, Jennifer. I'll take it from here." Samantha waited until Jennifer left before speaking. "I wanted you to hear this from me, not from gossip or Jennifer's accidentally dropping his name. Marcus Webb did work here, for exactly 3 months before the robbery. I hired him myself." Michael sat down heavily in his new chair. "The police are going to have a field day with this." "They already are. Morrison called me Friday to inform me that Webb's employment here confirms her theory about the robbery being an inside job." Samantha's voice was tight with frustration. "Never mind that Webb passed every background check. Never mind that he was highly qualified and had excellent references. Never mind that I had no way of knowing he was planning a robbery at his former workplace." "How did you not know? You said you hired him yourself." "I interviewed him along with 4 other candidates. He was professional, experienced, and came recommended by someone I trust in the industry. How was I supposed to know he was secretly planning a robbery?" She turned to face Michael fully. "I need you to understand something. Morrison is building a narrative that makes me look either incompetent or complicit. She thinks I either knew about the robbery and did nothing, or that I was so sloppy in my hiring that I brought a criminal into my company. Either way, it makes me look bad. Is she wrong?" The question hung between them, sharp and unavoidable. Samantha's eyes flashed with hurt, then anger. "Are you seriously asking me that? After everything?" "I'm asking because I need to know what I'm walking into." Michael kept his voice level. "Because if there's even a chance Morrison is right, if there's something you're not telling me, I need to know now, before I put my name on employment contracts and tie my future to this company." Samantha was quiet for a long moment, her jaw tight. When she spoke, her voice was controlled but fierce. "I did not know Marcus Webb was planning a robbery. I did not hire him because of his connection to the mall. I did not stage or facilitate or benefit from that robbery in any way beyond the unfortunate fact that surviving it gave me publicity I never asked for. That's the truth, Michael. You can believe it or not, but it's the truth." Michael studied her face, looking for any sign of deception. All he saw was anger and hurt and exhaustion. "Okay. Okay? I believe you. Again. For what feels like the 100th time this week." He rubbed his eyes. "I'm sorry, I'm just trying to be careful, trying to make sure I'm not making a huge mistake." "I understand, and I don't blame you for being cautious." Samantha moved to sit in the chair across from his desk, suddenly looking very tired. "But Michael, I need you to understand what you're signing up for. Morrison isn't going to stop investigating. The media isn't going to stop asking questions. Working here, working for me, is going to put you right in the center of this mess. And I can't promise it won't get worse before it gets better." "Then why offer me the job? Why bring me into this if you knew it would complicate my life?" "Because you're good at what you do, and I need someone I can trust in this position. Because Webb's betrayal showed me that I need to be more careful about who I bring into my inner circle. And because—" She paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "Because you're the only person in this entire situation who I know for certain isn't lying to me." You were there. You saw what happened. You know the truth. And in a world where everyone seems to have an agenda, that matters more than you can possibly know. Michael leaned back in his chair, taking in the office that was now his. The view of the city spread out below, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What do you need me to do? Your job. Review our current security protocols, identify weaknesses, build training programs. Help me make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else in this company. Samantha stood up, back to business. And if Morrison comes asking more questions, you tell her the truth. Don't protect me. Don't lie for me. Just tell her what you saw and what you know. That's it? That's it. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Actually, one more thing. Your team is waiting in the conference room to meet you. Try not to let them see how terrified you are. They're nervous too. They just lost their manager under very dramatic circumstances, and now they're getting a new consultant who's literally famous for surviving the incident that got their old boss arrested. First impressions matter. No pressure, Samantha smiled faintly. Welcome to corporate America. It's all pressure, all the time. She left, and Michael sat alone in his new office for exactly 30 seconds before standing up, straightening his new shirt, and walking toward the conference room where his new team waited. His heart was pounding, his hands were sweating. Every instinct told him to run, to go back to his simple life where the biggest challenge was dealing with shoplifters, and the biggest decision was whether to buy name brand or generic cereal. But Owen's face flashed through his mind, his son's joy at finally getting that dinosaur, his pride in his dad for landing a real job, his simple faith that everything would work out. Michael pushed open the conference room door and walked in to meet his future. 6 people looked up when Michael entered the conference room, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical to openly suspicious. He recognized the dynamic immediately, a team that had just lost their leader under scandalous circumstances, now facing an outsider who'd been dropped into a position of authority without earning their trust. He'd seen it in the Marines when new officers were assigned to established units. The key was acknowledging the elephant in the room before it could trample everyone. I'm Michael Carter, he said, standing at the head of the table rather than sitting. And before we go any further, let's address the obvious. Yes, I'm the guy from the mall robbery. Yes, your former manager was one of the people who tried to kill me. And yes, that's incredibly awkward for all of us. A woman in her 40s with short silver hair actually laughed. Well, at least you're direct about it. I learned in the military that dancing around problems just makes them bigger. Michael pulled out a chair but didn't sit yet. Here's what I know. I have no corporate security experience. I don't know your systems, your protocols, or half the technology you probably use daily. What I do have is 7 years as a Force Recon Marine, 3 years keeping people safe in less than ideal circumstances, and a very recent, very visceral reminder of what happens when security fails. The man closest to Michael, late 20s, expensive suit, arms crossed defensively, spoke up. So Samantha hired you because you were in the right place at the right time. That's not exactly a qualification. You're right, it's not. Michael met his gaze steadily. She hired me because when things went wrong, I didn't freeze. I assessed, adapted, and acted. That's what I'm here to bring to this team, not corporate polish or buzzwords, but practical knowledge about how to keep people alive when the plan falls apart. And you think we don't have that? The man's tone was challenging. I think you have expertise I don't. I think you know this company, this industry, these systems better than I ever will. And I think if we're going to make this work, we need to respect what each person brings to the table. Michael finally sat down, keeping his posture open and non-threatening. So how about we start over? Tell me who you are and what you do. Help me understand what I'm walking into. The silver-haired woman went first. Rachel Winters. I've been with the company for 8 years, focused on digital security infrastructure, access controls, badge systems, surveillance integration. I work with IT to make sure our physical and digital security talk to each other. She paused. Marcus was my supervisor. I recommended him for the position. The guilt in her voice was unmistakable. Michael understood immediately why she might be the most resistant to his presence. He was a living reminder of her mistaken judgment. Did he give you any reason to doubt him before the robbery? Michael asked. None. He was professional, knowledgeable. Easy to work with. Rachel's jaw tightened, which makes me either an idiot or a terrible judge of character. Or it makes him a good liar. Michael kept his voice gentle. People who plan crimes don't advertise their intentions. They blend in. They earn trust. That's not your fault. The defensive man spoke next, his tone slightly less hostile. David Chen. I handle corporate campus security, patrol routes, emergency response protocols, coordination with local law enforcement. Been here 5 years. He didn't apologize for his earlier challenge, but his posture had relaxed slightly. The introductions continued. Lisa Martinez, specialist in executive protection and event security. James Okoye, who managed security for the company's data centers and handled vendor relationships. Sarah Kim, who focused on employee safety training and compliance. And finally, Thomas Reed, the youngest at 24, who was apparently some kind of genius with security technology and predictive threat modeling. We've been operating without a manager for 2 weeks, Rachel said once introductions were complete. Marcus was arrested, his access was revoked, and we've been reporting directly to Samantha while she figured out what to do with the position. Most of us assumed she'd promote from within. She should have, Michael said bluntly. Any one of you has more relevant experience than I do, so why didn't she? David leaned forward. That's what we've been asking ourselves. No offense, but we were expecting someone with corporate security credentials. Someone who understands the business side of what we do. None taken. I'm wondering the same thing. Michael looked around the table. Here's my theory, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. Samantha doesn't just want someone who can build security protocols and manage vendors. She wants someone who understands violence on a visceral level. Someone who's seen what happens when security fails catastrophically and people die. She wants that perspective in the room when you're making decisions. Thomas spoke up for the first time, his voice quiet and thoughtful. After the mall incident, Samantha called an emergency meeting. She was shaken. I've never seen her like that. She kept saying we'd gotten complacent, that we'd been focused on cyber threats and data breaches while ignoring the basic physical dangers that could hurt people. He glanced at Rachel. No offense, but she said our security was designed to protect assets, not people. She wasn't wrong, Rachel admitted. We're good at preventing theft and data loss. But active shooter protocols, hostage situations, we run the same generic training everyone does and hope we never need it. Michael absorbed this, pieces clicking into place. So she wants me to change that, to bring a different perspective to how you think about security. Apparently, David still looked skeptical. But theory and practice are different. No offense, but can you actually do this job? Can you manage a team, work with executives, build comprehensive security programs? Or are you just good in a crisis? It was a fair question, and Michael respected him for asking it directly. Honestly, I don't know. I've never done this job before. But I've led Marines in combat, which means I know how to assess threats, make decisions under pressure, and keep people alive when everything goes wrong. I'm hoping that translates, but I'm going to need help from all of you to learn the parts I don't know. Something shifted in the room's energy. Not quite acceptance, but a crack in the wall of suspicion. Lisa was the one who put it into words. Most people in your position would have come in here trying to prove they deserved the job, acting like they had all the answers. She studied him with sharp eyes. You're doing the opposite. That's either very smart or very naive. Probably both. Michael allowed himself a small smile. Look, I know this situation is weird. I know having me here is a constant reminder of what Marcus did. But I'm here, and we have work to do, so we can either waste time resenting each other or figure out how to work together. I prefer option 2. Rachel stood up and walked to a whiteboard mounted on the wall. Then let's start with what you asked for, helping you understand what you're walking into. She picked up a marker and began sketching an organizational chart. Hale Industries has 15 corporate locations across the country, plus dozens of smaller satellite offices and remote workers. Our security division is responsible for physical security at all corporate locations, executive protection for Samantha and other C-suite executives, emergency response planning, and coordination with local law enforcement. David joined her at the board, adding notes. We also consult on security for major client installations. When Hale Industries builds a data center or cloud infrastructure for a client, they often want us to advise on physical security measures. That's been growing. It's actually where Marcus was supposed to focus most of his attention. Was he working on any active projects before his arrest? Michael asked. The team exchanged glances. James spoke carefully. He was overseeing security design for a new facility in Phoenix. The project's been put on hold pending investigation. The client is understandably nervous about having someone arrested for armed robbery involved in their security planning. Can it be salvaged? If we move fast and demonstrate that Marcus was an aberration, not representative of our team's quality, but we'd need someone to step in as lead consultant, review everything he did, and essentially guarantee the client that the work is sound. Rachel turned to look at Michael. That someone would probably be you. Michael felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on his shoulders. How much time do we have? Client wants a decision by end of month. Either we resume the project with new leadership or they terminate the contract. It's worth about $3 million in consulting fees plus the potential for future business. David's expression was grim. No pressure. Right, no pressure. Michael stood and walked to the whiteboard, studying the organizational chart and notes. Okay, I need to get up to speed fast. Rachel, can you walk me through our current protocols and systems? David, I want to review emergency response plans for all locations. Lisa, executive protection procedures. I need to understand what's standard versus what needs improvement. James, vendor relationships and data center security. Sarah, training programs and compliance requirements. Thomas, show me your threat modeling system and how we use data to predict security risks. He turned back to face the team. I know that's a lot to dump on you immediately, but I can't lead effectively if I don't understand what we're doing. I'll need a few days to absorb everything, then we'll regroup and figure out how to move forward on the Phoenix project and everything else that's been put on hold. For the first time, Michael saw something like respect in David's eyes. You're serious about this. Dead serious. I might not have corporate experience, but I know how to learn fast and adapt. That's what kept me alive in combat zones. Michael checked his watch. It's 10:30 now. Can we start with an overview of current operations, then break into smaller sessions this afternoon? Rachel nodded slowly. I'll pull up our security management platform. Thomas, can you get the presentation on threat modeling ready for after lunch? As the team began organizing materials and discussing logistics, Michael felt the first stirring of something that might eventually become confidence. They were willing to work with him, even if they weren't sold on him yet. That was enough to start with. The rest of the day passed in a blur of information. Rachel walked him through badge access systems, surveillance networks, and incident reporting protocols. David outlined emergency response plans that seemed comprehensive on paper, but had obvious gaps when Michael asked detailed questions about implementation. Lisa's executive protection procedures were solid, built on industry best practices, but focused heavily on reputation protection and media management, rather than actual physical threat response. By 4 o'clock, Michael's head was spinning with acronyms and systems and protocols. He'd taken notes until his hand cramped, asked questions until he saw the team's initial skepticism shift to something like grudging approval of his thoroughness. One last thing before you go, Rachel said as the team started packing up for the day. Samantha wants to see you in her office at 5. Fair warning. When she calls end-of-day meetings, it usually means something's wrong. Michael's stomach tightened. Any idea what this is about? Could be anything, could be nothing. With Samantha, you never know. Rachel gave him a sympathetic look. Don't take it personally if she's intense. She's brilliant, but demanding. Most people can't handle working directly with her. Good thing I spent 7 years with drill sergeants then. That got a genuine laugh from several team members. David clapped him on the shoulder as he left. You might actually survive this job, Carter. Emphasis on might. Michael spent the 20 minutes before his meeting reviewing his notes and trying not to panic about how much he didn't know. When his phone alarm went off at 4:50, he made his way to the executive floor where Samantha's office occupied a corner with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that probably cost more than most people's houses. Her assistant waved him through. She's expecting you. Go right in. Samantha was on the phone when Michael entered, gesturing for him to sit while she finished her conversation. He took the opportunity to study her office, surprisingly sparse for a billionaire with minimal decoration beyond a few photos on her desk. Michael could make out a young boy who must be her son Marcus, smiling gap-toothed at the camera. "Sorry about that." Samantha hung up and turned her full attention to Michael. "How was your first day? Did the team eat you alive?" They were professional, skeptical, but professional. Michael settled into the chair across from her desk. "Rachel seems to blame herself for recommending Marcus. David doesn't trust that I can do the job. The others are reserving judgment." "That sounds about right." Samantha pulled up something on her computer screen, frowned, then closed it. "Detective Morrison called me again this afternoon. She wanted to know if I'd offered you employment before or after the robbery." Michael's blood ran cold. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That I offered you the job last week after our coffee meeting because you have skills this company needs." She didn't like that answer. "She thinks you're paying me off, buying my silence or loyalty or whatever." "Obviously." Samantha's voice was tight with frustration. "She also informed me that Marcus Webb is claiming he acted alone, that his sister had no knowledge of his plans, and that his employment here was coincidental, which should clear me of suspicion, except Morrison seems convinced I'm lying about not knowing who Amanda Webb was when I hired her." "Are there records, emails, interview notes, anything that proves you didn't know?" "Of course, I have a paper trail a mile long showing standard hiring procedures. But Morrison keeps implying that the paper trail could be fabricated, that someone with my resources could create false documentation." Samantha leaned back in her chair, exhausted. "I can't win. If I cooperate, I look guilty of something. If I lawyer up and refuse to answer questions, I look like I'm hiding something." Michael thought about his own conversations with Morrison, about how the detective had tried to make innocent actions look suspicious through implication and suggestion. "She's fishing. She doesn't have actual evidence of wrongdoing, so she's hoping to pressure someone into making a mistake or contradicting themselves." "I know. My lawyers explain that, but knowing it doesn't make it less stressful." Samantha rubbed her temples. "And now you're caught in the middle of it. I'm sorry, Michael. I knew this might complicate things for you, but I didn't realize Morrison would be this aggressive about pursuing a theory with no evidence." "It's not your fault. Morrison is doing her job. Even if her theory is wrong, she has to investigate it thoroughly." Michael paused. "For what it's worth, spending today with your team made me more certain that you're telling the truth. They're professionals. They take security seriously. If you'd hired Marcus knowing he was planning a robbery, someone would have noticed something off about him. But they didn't, which means he fooled everyone, not just you." Samantha's expression softened. "Thank you for that. I needed to hear it." She pulled up a different file on her computer. "There's another reason I wanted to talk to you. The Phoenix project that's been on hold, the client called today. They're willing to give us 1 week to prove we can deliver without Marcus. They want a new security assessment, a revised timeline, and a meeting with whoever's taking over as lead consultant." "That's me, apparently." "Are you ready for that?" Michael considered lying, considered saying he needed more time to get up to speed. But Samantha had been honest with him, and he owed her the same. "No, but I don't think waiting another week is going to make me significantly more ready, and we can't afford to lose a $3 million contract because I'm still learning the ropes." "So what do you suggest?" "I take point on the client relationship because they need to see new leadership. But Rachel and David come with me. They know the technical details and can back me up when I'm out of my depth. I handle the big picture and threat assessment. They handle implementation and specifics." Samantha smiled. "That's a good plan. Exactly what I was hoping you'd say. You were testing me. I was seeing how you think under pressure, whether you'd try to fake expertise you don't have, or whether you'd build a team to cover your gaps. You chose the right option." She stood up, signaling the meeting was ending. "The client meeting is Thursday in Phoenix. Jennifer will arrange travel for you and whoever you want to bring. Budget isn't an issue. Impress them." "No pressure, right?" "Michael, in this job, there's always pressure. The question is whether you use it to sharpen your focus or let it crush you." Samantha walked him to the door. "Get some rest, spend time with Owen, and don't overthink things. You're here because you can do this job. I just need you to believe it too." Michael left her office with his head spinning. 4 days. He had 4 days to prepare for a meeting that could make or break his credibility with both the client and his new team. 4 days to prove he deserved this position and wasn't just a charity case Samantha had hired out of guilt. He drove home through rush hour traffic, his mind already working through what he'd need to review, who he'd need to talk to, how he'd need to prepare. When he pulled into his apartment parking lot, Owen was sitting on the front steps with Mrs. Chen, both of them waving enthusiastically. "How was it?" Owen ran up as Michael got out of the car. "Was it cool? Did you have your own office? Did anyone try to rob the place?" Michael laughed and scooped his son up despite his bad shoulder protesting. "It was good. A little overwhelming, but good. And yes, I have my own office with a view of the whole city. Can I see it sometime? We'll figure something out." Michael set Owen down and turned to Mrs. Chen. "Thank you for watching him." "Anytime. He's been talking about your new job all afternoon." She smiled warmly. "I'm proud of you, Michael. Your wife would be proud too." The unexpected mention of Sarah hit harder than Michael anticipated. He'd been so focused on surviving and providing for Owen that he'd barely thought about what she would think of all this. Would she be proud? Or would she think he was crazy for getting involved with a billionaire's drama and taking a job he wasn't qualified for? "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. That means a lot." After she left, Michael and Owen heated up leftover pizza and sat at their small kitchen table while Owen peppered him with questions about the new job. Michael answered what he could, editing out the parts about police investigations and suspicious robberies and conspiracy theories. "So the lady from the mall is your boss now?" Owen asked around a mouthful of pizza. "Technically, yes, but I don't work directly with her most of the time. I work with a team of other security people." "Are they nice?" Michael thought about David's skepticism, Rachel's guilt, and the team's collective uncertainty about his presence. "They're professional. We're still figuring out how to work together. Like when I had to do a group project with Tyler and Emma and we didn't know each other yet." Exactly like that. Owen considered this wisdom while chewing. "You should bring them cookies. That's what Grandma Sarah always said. When in doubt, bring cookies." "Your grandmother was a smart woman." Michael smiled at the memory of his mother-in-law's solution to every social situation. "Maybe I will." They spent the evening in comfortable routine, homework, bath time, reading stories before bed. Owen wanted to hear about the mall incident again, processing his trauma through repeated questioning. Michael had learned not to shy away from these conversations, to answer honestly, but age-appropriately. "Were you scared when you ran to help the lady?" Owen asked as Michael tucked him in. "Terrified. But I knew she needed help, and I knew you were safe where I'd left you, so I did what needed to be done. And now she's helping you, because you helped her first." "I guess so." "That's called karma. We learned about it in social studies. When you do good things come back to you." Owen yawned, already drifting toward sleep. "I'm glad you got good karma, Dad. You deserve it." Michael sat with that thought long after Owen fell asleep. Karma, cosmic justice, cause and effect, whatever you called it, the chain of events that started with a split-second decision in a mall had led him here. To a job that terrified him, a situation that could blow up in his face, and possibilities he'd never dared to imagine. The next 3 days were a crash course in corporate security consulting. Michael arrived at the office by 7 each morning and stayed until 6 each evening, absorbing everything his team could teach him. Rachel walked him through the Phoenix Project's history, explaining the client's concerns and the security challenges of their facility. David coached him on professional presentation skills and client management. Thomas built him a crash course on threat modeling and risk assessment. By Wednesday night, Michael felt moderately prepared for Thursday's meeting. Not confident, but prepared. He'd reviewed every document twice, practiced his presentation until he could deliver it without notes, and coordinated with Rachel and David on who would handle which questions. "You're going to do fine," Rachel said as they wrapped up their final prep session. "Stop overthinking it. You know the material, you understand the client's concerns, and you've got good instincts. Trust yourself." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one who's going to tank a $3 million contract if you screw up." "If you screw up, we all screw up. We're a team, remember?" She gave him a look that was almost maternal. "Michael, I was wrong about you. When Samantha first announced she'd hired you, I thought it was a publicity stunt or guilt or something equally stupid. But watching you this week, the way you listen, the way you ask the right questions, the way you actually care about getting it right, I get it now. You belong here. The words hit harder than Michael expected. Thank you. That really means a lot. Don't make me regret saying it by choking tomorrow. But she was smiling as she left. Michael stayed late, reviewing the presentation one more time. When his phone rang at 8:30, he almost didn't answer, until he saw it was Samantha. "You're still at the office," she said without preamble. "How did you know?" "Your computer is logged in. I get notifications when anyone accesses the system after 8 p.m. She paused. "Go home, Michael. You're prepared. Staying late and obsessing over details isn't going to help." "How do you know I'm obsessing?" "Because it's what I would do. And you remind me of myself in some ways. The need to prove you deserve to be here. The fear that one mistake will confirm everyone's doubts." Her voice was gentle. "But you've put in the work. You've earned this meeting. Now go home and get some rest so you can do your job tomorrow." Michael saved his work and shut down his computer. "Thank you for believing in me, for giving me this chance. Thank me by landing this client." But he could hear the smile in her voice. "Good luck tomorrow." The flight to Phoenix the next morning was Michael's first time on an airplane since leaving the military. Rachel and David kept the conversation light, sensing his nerves, telling stories about other client meetings and the disasters they'd narrowly avoided. By the time they landed, Michael felt marginally more relaxed. The client was a financial services company building a new regional headquarters. Their CEO, Margaret Richardson, was in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She greeted them in a conference room where 3 of her executives waited, all looking skeptical. "I'll be direct," Margaret said once introductions were complete. "We're here because we paid Hale Industries a significant deposit for security consulting that we've yet to receive. Your former project lead is now in jail for armed robbery, which doesn't inspire confidence in your company's judgment. Give me one reason why we shouldn't terminate this contract and hire someone else." Michael had prepared for this. He pulled up his presentation and stood up, meeting Margaret's challenging gaze. Because Marcus Webb fooled everyone. Not just Hale Industries, but his parole board, his references, his background checks, and the jewelry store that originally employed him. If someone is determined to hide their criminal intent, they can do it successfully for a while. What matters is how a company responds when deception is discovered. He clicked to the next slide showing revised security plans. When Webb was arrested, Hale Industries immediately froze all his projects, reviewed all his work, and brought in fresh eyes to verify nothing was compromised. "I've spent the last week examining everything he did for your project. The good news is, his security assessment was actually solid. His criminal activity didn't compromise his professional expertise. The bad news is he didn't complete several critical components before his arrest." "And you're qualified to complete them?" one of the executives asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer was no. "I'm qualified to identify security gaps that could get people killed, because I've seen what happens when security fails. I'm not qualified to implement complex digital systems or handle vendor negotiations, which is why I brought Rachel Winters and David Chen. They handle the technical work while I focus on threat assessment and emergency response." Michael moved to the next slide. What Webb couldn't give you, because he never experienced it himself, is insight into how actual violent incidents unfold, how people behave in crisis situations, where theoretical plans break down under pressure. That's what I bring to this project. He spent the next hour walking through a revised security plan that incorporated lessons from the mall incident, active shooter protocols that went beyond generic training, evacuation procedures based on how people actually move during panic, communication systems designed for when primary networks fail. Rachel and David jumped in with technical details and implementation timelines, the 3 of them working as a coordinated team. When Michael finished, Margaret was quiet for a long moment. "You've clearly done your homework, but I'm curious about something. Why take this job? You're famous now. You could write a book, do speaking tours, capitalize on your hero status. Instead, you're here trying to salvage a security consulting contract. Why?" Michael hadn't expected that question, but he answered honestly. "Because being called a hero for 30 seconds of action doesn't pay my son's school fees or put food on the table. Because I spent 3 years in a job that wasted my training and experience, and this is the first opportunity I've had to use my skills for something meaningful. And because Samantha Hale took a chance on me when everyone else would have looked at my resume and passed. I owe it to her and to myself to prove I can do this job. Margaret smiled for the first time. That's the right answer, the honest one. She looked at her executives, some silent communication passing between them. We'll give you a chance. Conditional approval to resume the project with progress reviews every 2 weeks. Miss a deadline or deliver substandard work, and we terminate immediately. Fair? More than fair. Michael felt relief wash through him. Thank you. We won't let you down. After the meeting, as they waited for their flight back home, Rachel bought Michael a beer at the airport bar. That was impressive, she said, clinking her bottle against his. The way you handled Margaret's skepticism, the way you acknowledged gaps in your knowledge without apologizing for them, you might actually be good at this job. Might? Give it a few more weeks. I'm not ready to fully commit to that assessment yet. But she was grinning. David joined them, looking more relaxed than Michael had ever seen him. I'll admit it. I was wrong about you. I thought Samantha hired you for PR reasons, but you earned that contract today. That was all you. That was all of us, Michael corrected. I couldn't have done it without you two backing me up on the technical details. True, but you set the tone. You made them trust us again. David raised his beer. To not completely screwing up. I'll drink to that. They flew back to a voicemail from Samantha that was brief but warm. Margaret called. She was impressed. Well done, all of you. Take tomorrow off. You earned it. Michael picked up Owen from Mrs. Chen's that evening, swinging him up in a victory hug. How'd it go? His son asked. We got the contract. The client is happy. The team is happy. Your dad didn't completely embarrass himself. I knew you wouldn't. You're too smart to embarrass yourself. That's a very generous assessment of my intelligence, but I'll take it. They celebrated with pizza again. It was becoming their tradition, and Owen told him about a science project on volcanoes and a girl named Sophie who'd shared her cookies at lunch. Normal, beautiful 7-year-old concerns that had nothing to do with robberies or police investigations or corporate contracts. This was what the job was really for, Michael thought as he listened to his son chatter. Not the money or the title or proving himself. It was for moments like this, where Owen could be a kid without carrying the weight of their struggles, where Michael could be a dad without the constant gnawing anxiety about how to pay next month's bills. The following Monday, Michael arrived at work to find his team gathered in his office looking serious. His first thought was that something had gone wrong with the Phoenix contract, but Rachel's expression wasn't worried. It was conspiratorial. So we talked, she said, and we decided something. This sounds ominous. We want to apologize, David said, for how we treated you the first few days, for being skeptical and making you prove yourself when we should have given you the benefit of the doubt. Michael was genuinely surprised. You had every reason to be skeptical. I was an unknown quantity dropped into a leadership position during a crisis. If anything, you gave me more grace than I deserved. Maybe. But we could have been more welcoming, more supportive. Rachel held out a small gift bag. So this is our way of saying welcome to the team, for real this time. Inside was a coffee mug that read, World's Okayest Security Consultant, and a frame containing a mock certificate declaring him officially not the worst manager we've ever had. Michael laughed until his eyes watered. This is perfect, thank you. There's a card too, Lisa added, smiling. Michael opened the envelope to find a card signed by the entire team, each person adding a personal note. Rachel had written, You remind me why I love this job. David said, Glad to have you on the team, even if you still can't use the coffee maker right. Thomas had drawn a little cartoon of Michael throwing himself over Samantha while screaming, I got this! Even Sarah, who'd barely spoken to him directly, had written, Thank you for bringing a different perspective. We needed it. I don't know what to say, Michael admitted, genuinely touched. Except, thank you. For giving me a chance, for helping me learn, for becoming a real team. Don't get sappy on us, David warned. We still have work to do. Phoenix is just the start. We've got 3 other projects that need attention, a security audit that's overdue, and Samantha wants a complete overhaul of our active threat response protocols. Then let's get to work. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Michael absorbed information like a sponge, learning the corporate side of security while teaching his team the practical realities of crisis response. The Phoenix project progressed smoothly, with Margaret sending positive feedback after each review meeting. Other clients who'd been nervous about working with Hale Industries started calling back, reassured by the new leadership. Detective Morrison continued her investigation, but the calls became less frequent. Without new evidence to support her theory, the case against Samantha went nowhere. Marcus Webb pleaded guilty to armed robbery and was sentenced to 15 years. His sister Amanda resigned from Hale Industries voluntarily and moved to another state. The media moved on to other stories, and slowly the scandal faded into background noise. Michael's life changed in 1,000 small ways. He and Owen moved to a better apartment with 2 bedrooms and a small balcony where they could eat breakfast on weekend mornings. Owen joined a travel soccer team that required fees Michael could now afford. Michael bought clothes that fit and didn't have holes, started a savings account that had more than $50 in it, took Owen to a real dentist for the first time in 2 years. But the biggest change was harder to quantify. For the first time since Sarah died, Michael felt like he was building something instead of just surviving. He had a career, not just a job, a team that respected him, work that mattered. And slowly, carefully, he had a friendship with Samantha that was growing into something deeper. It started small. After-hours calls about work that turned into conversations about their kids, about being single parents, about the loneliness of making every decision alone. Coffee meetings that stretched into lunch because neither wanted the conversation to end. Texts that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with just wanting to connect. 3 months after Michael started at Hale Industries, Samantha invited him and Owen to her house for a barbecue. Her son Marcus was shy at first, but Owen's natural friendliness broke through, and soon they were racing around the backyard like they'd known each other forever. "They're good together," Samantha said, watching them play from the patio where she and Michael sat with drinks. Marcus doesn't make friends easily, but Owen just bulldozed past all his defenses. That's his superpower. Social anxiety doesn't exist in Owen's world. Michael smiled at his son's laughter. "He's been asking about meeting Marcus ever since I told him you had a son too. We should do this more often." Samantha said it casually, but Michael heard the loneliness underneath. It's good for them to have kids to play with. Good for us to have adult conversation that isn't about work. I'd like that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the boys and the sunset painting the sky orange and pink. Finally, Samantha spoke again, her voice quiet. "I never properly thanked you for that day in the mall, for what you did. You've thanked me 100 times, and you gave me a job that changed my life. I think we're even. We're not even close to even." She turned to look at him, and Michael saw something vulnerable in her expression. "You gave me a second chance at life. You reminded me that success isn't measured in stock prices and quarterly reports, and you showed me that letting someone help you isn't weakness. It's being human." "Samantha, let me finish." She took a breath. "When you first started, I told you I hired you because you could do the job. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. I also hired you because you were the only person in that whole terrible experience who didn't want something from me. You didn't want money or fame or a favor or a escas. You just wanted to make sure Owen was safe and that you'd done the right thing. In a world where everyone has an angle, that was refreshing." Michael's chest felt tight. "I'm still that person. I didn't take this job to get close to you or leverage our connection or any of that." "I know. That's why I'm saying this." Samantha smiled, but her eyes were serious. "I like you, Michael. Not as an employee or as the guy who saved my life, just as a person, as a friend. Maybe as more than a friend if you're open to that possibility." Michael's heart was racing. He'd felt the connection growing between them, but had convinced himself he was imagining it, that someone like Samantha wouldn't be interested in someone like him. "I'm open to it, but I need you to know. I'm still figuring out how to be a person again after Sarah died. I'm still learning how to be something other than just Owen's dad. I might be terrible at this. Then we'll be terrible at it together." Samantha reached over and took his hand. No pressure, no expectations, Just two people who've been through hell and came out the other side wanting to see where this goes. Michael squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against his. I can work with that. Owen ran up at that moment, breathless and excited. Dad, Marcus has a telescope. Can we stay until it gets dark and look at the stars? Michael glanced at Samantha, who nodded. Yeah, buddy, we can stay. As the evening darkened and the boys set up the telescope, Michael sat on Samantha's patio holding her hand and felt something shift in his chest. For 3 years he'd been surviving, pushing through each day with grim determination. But this, sitting here with a woman who understood him, watching his son laugh and make friends, feeling the possibility of something new beginning, this was living. It had started with chaos, with gunshots and broken glass and split-second decisions made in terror. But somehow, impossibly, it had led here, to a second chance for both of them, to the reminder that even in the darkest moments, humans could choose to protect each other, to help each other, to build something beautiful from the wreckage. Michael looked at Samantha, at the woman he'd thrown himself over without thinking, and saw her looking back at him with the same wonder. Two people who'd faced death and decided to choose life, together. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For seeing me. For believing in me. For giving me a chance to be more than I thought I could be. Samantha leaned over and kissed his cheek, gentle and brief. Thank you for reminding me what courage looks like. For showing me that heroism isn't about grand gestures. It's about choosing to help when you could choose to walk away. From the telescope, Owen called out that he'd found Jupiter. Michael and Samantha stood up together, still holding hands, and walked over to look at the distant planet through the lens. And as he stared at the cosmos with his son beside him and Samantha's hand in his, Michael Carter finally believed what his son had told him months ago. Good things do come back to you. Not because the universe keeps score, but because one moment of choosing kindness over fear could change everything. For everyone. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, it could lead you home to a place you never knew you were searching for.